Welcome back, brothers, to Warhammer. Tonight we're diving how Corax and the remaining Raven Guard was able to escape into Von 5. As always, before I get to the madness, be sure to like and comment any videos and topics you want to see in the future. Be sure to subscribe for the Emperor. I want to thank you guys for the support. I've been killing it. Now, let's get to the madness.
Corax knew the battle was lost when the first shells struck his sons from behind. Until that moment, defeat had remained a possibility to be measured, resisted, and overturned. The Raven Guard had broken through trenches clogged with the dead of the Emperor's children. They had crossed fields burning with spilled promethium and the ruptured fuel of battle tanks. They had driven the War Master's rebels backwards beneath a sky blackened by gunship contrails and orbital debris. Every meter had been purchased with legionary blood, yet it had been purchased. The enemy had yielded ground. Then the supposed relief force opened fire. The first Iron Warrior's bombardment descended with mathematical precision. Shells intended to crack fortifications burst among the Raven Guard reserve companies, each detonation hurling armored bodies into the air. A legionary struck the earth before Corax with both legs missing, the white bones of his pelvis jutting through the torn seals of his battleplate. He tried to rise. A second barrage erased him, reducing the warrior and 6 of his brothers to fragments that slapped wetly against Corax's armor. Behind the artillery came the bolters. Fresh ranks of Alpha Legion, Night Lords, Word Bearers and Iron Warriors fired into the backs of the exhausted loyalists. Thousands of mass-reactive shells crossed the Urgol Depression in overlapping storms. They struck power packs, gorgets, and the weaker armor beneath raised arms. They bored through ceramite before detonating inside transhuman flesh. Torsos burst. Heads vanished in sprays of bone and grey matter. Severed limbs spun through the sulphurous air, still trailing cables and blood from ruptured armor seals. Thunderhawks bearing the black pinions of the 19th Legion exploded upon their landing grounds. One gunship rose no more than 20 meters before a Lascanon beam cut through its forward fuselage. The craft rolled onto its side and plowed through a Raven Guard formation, crushing warriors beneath its armored bulk before its munitions ignited. The blast opened the earth and filled the crater with pieces of men and machine indistinguishable from one another. The battlefield did not descend into chaos. It was transformed into murder. Corax stood within that transformation, one knee pressed into the black sand, his damaged flight pack coughing sparks behind him. Blood ran from rents in his armor. Some of it was his. Most belonged to warriors whose names he would never learn. The severed mechanisms of his left lightning claw hung uselessly from his vambrace. Curs had ruined the weapon during their brief murderous clash, his talons raking through the Raven Lord's guard with the shrieking intimacy of knives scraped across bone. Lorgar's blood still steamed upon Corax's surviving claw. The Golden Sun had escaped death only because the Night Haunter had interposed himself. There would be another reckoning. Not here, not now. Corax rose as word-bearers charged through the smoke. Their warplate was crimson beneath soot and gore. Parchments burned from their pauldrons. One carried a Crozius crowned by an iron book, its pages engraved with words the Emperor had forbidden. The warrior shouted something about revelation. Corax did not listen. He crossed the distance before the first syllable had finished leaving the traitor's vox grill. His remaining claw entered beneath the warrior's breastplate, passed through the lower ribs, and erupted from his back. Energized talons opened both hearts. Corax lifted the word-bearer from the ground, tore him in half, and hurled the upper portion into those following. He moved among them in silence. A claw stroke removed a head and the arm of the warrior beside it. His backswing opened another legionary from groin to sternum, spilling loops of intestine that caught around the traitor's knees as he fell. Corax caught a descending power maul against his ruined vambrace, let its disruption field crack the dead mechanisms, then drove his forehead through the wielder's faceplate. Metal folded. Bone collapsed. The warrior's skull burst inward and flooded his helmet with blood, teeth, and pulped brain. The last word-bearer tried to retreat. Corax seized the legionary by the power pack and smashed him face first into the ground. Once, twice. On the third impact, the helmet split and left most of its contents in the sand. His sons were dying around him. That truth mattered, more than vengeance. Corax opened the Legion command net and heard only overlapping screams, corrupted coordinates, and the machine shriek of dying Vox systems. Enemy signals polluted every frequency. False orders commanded Raven Guard companies to hold positions already overrun. Familiar voices called warriors toward muster zones occupied by the enemy. The command network had been compromised before the betrayal began. Horus had prepared everything. Corax abandoned the recognized channels. He transmitted a sequence of clipped phrases drawn from the codes of Lycaeus, words first used by prisoners and saboteurs beneath the surveillance of the guildmasters. Blackfall, the furnaces are blind. Break the chain at every link. Ash nests beyond the western teeth. Acknowledgements returned at once, scattered and faint. Some came from captains. Others came from sergeants who had inherited companies in the space of a heartbeat. One voice demanded confirmation. Corax gave it. General withdrawal. Disperse by claw and talon. No massed embarkation. No fixed defense. Reach the hills and await shadow cant. My lord, a captain answered, his vox distorted by gunfire. The salamanders remain engaged along the southern escarpment. Another voice broke across him. Iron Hand's formations are still advancing. We cannot abandon them. Corax watched a line of salamanders disappear beneath Iron Warrior's artillery. Green-armored bodies rose amid fountains of pulverized stone. One warrior staggered from the bombardment, carrying the upper half of a brother in his arms. Night Lords fell upon him before he had taken 10 steps. We cannot save them, Corax said. Silence answered him, save for the roar of the massacre. The captain returned. Then we die beside them. No. The word cut through the channel more sharply than any shouted command. Death will not restore Ferrus Manus. It will not gather Vulcan's sons from the fire. It will not absolve us of surviving where they could not. Corax stepped over the body of a Raven Guard, whose skull had been opened by a bolt shell. The traitors desire an ending. We will deny it to them. Withdraw. My lord, that is my command. The objection died. Across the killing ground, the Raven Guard began to fracture. It was no rout. Rout belonged to panic. This was dismemberment by design. Reconnaissance squads raced through curtains of smoke, their armor dark even against the burning earth. They marked ravines, defiles, and folds of dead ground with coded Auspex pulses. They identified gaps between the advancing traitor formations and killed the enemy observers who might close them. Squad by squad, the 19th Legion disengaged, firing only when necessary and vanishing before return volleys could find them. The Mordathan went where even Raven Guard scouts could not pass. Warriors blessed with the shadowed inheritance of their Primarch seemed to fade from the notice of those around them. They crossed open ground beneath enemy guns, appearing behind heavy weapons emplacements and command cadres. Officers died with blades through their throats. Ammunition feeds were severed. Targeting arrays went dark moments before retreating loyalists crossed their fields of fire. The Moritats did not withdraw. They entered the thickest concentrations of the enemy with pistols in both hands and ammunition enough for minutes. They sought no route back. Their purpose had always been destruction at the cost of the self, and Istvan had given them an abundance of worthy deaths. Corax saw one such warrior climb the wreck of a Spartan assault tank, while sons of Horus closed around him. The Moritats' pistols bucked in a continuous chain, each shot finding a visor, throat seal, or exposed joint. When the weapons clicked empty, he drew a grenade from his belt and allowed the traitors to drag him down. The explosion swallowed them all. Minutes had been purchased. Minutes were now more valuable than worlds. Corax ignited his flight pack. One turbine screamed in protest, but the Black Pinion assembly lifted him through the smoke. Fire washed beneath his boots. He rose above the depression and saw the magnitude of the betrayal. The Urgol killing ground extended from horizon to horizon. Titans stalked through burning dust, their void shields flaring beneath weapons powerful enough to murder cities. Armored columns ground across hills carpeted in corpses. Drop pods fell like iron rain, while gunships fought and died among them. Above all, artillery trails crossed the sky in such numbers that daylight had become a flickering red twilight. The Raven Guard were black islands, vanishing beneath a sea of traitors. Corax chose the nearest island. He descended into a mass of world eaters, surrounding fewer than 30 of his sons. His boots struck a legionary's shoulders, with enough force to drive the warrior's spine through his pelvis. Corax landed in the explosion of blood and shattered plate, his claw already moving. 3 world eaters died before the broken body reached the ground. The 4th came at him with a chain axe raised over his head. "Face me, coward!" Corax caught the haft below the weapon's roaring teeth. The world eater was a centurion, broad even for a legionary, his white armor painted red by the blood of the dead. Brass studs had been hammered into his skull. The butcher's nails twitched beneath the skin around his temples. He forced the chain axe down with both hands. Its teeth screamed centimeters from Corax's face. Corax twisted. The centurion's shoulder came apart with a crack of breaking bone and tearing fiber bundles. The arm remained attached to the axe. Blood pulsed from the empty socket in thick arterial jets. The World Eater stared at the wound as though unable to understand it. Corax drove his ruined vambrace into the centurion's throat, seized him by the waist, and swung him bodily into the warriors advancing behind him. The armored mass smashed one World Eater from his feet. Corax swung again, using the screaming centurion as a maul. A second traitor's helmet collapsed. A third lost the front of his face beneath the centurion's boot. Then Corax pulled. The World Eater came apart at the waist. Organs spilled between broken sections of armor. Corax threw the upper half into the remaining attackers and tore through them before they could rise. "Western Hills," he told the surrounded Raven Guard. "Move by squads. Leave no trail wider than one warrior." A sergeant with half his face burned away looked beyond Corax. "And you, Lord?" Corax launched himself into the air. He did not answer. He crossed the battlefield again and again. Each descent was an execution. Each ascent revealed another pocket of suns, close to annihilation. He broke a Night Lord's attack by killing their terror captain and suspending the body from a broken banner pole. He tore the turret from an Alpha Legion predator and filled the crew compartment with plasma from the tank's own damaged reactor. He landed among word-bearers, dragging wounded Raven Guard toward a ritual pit, and left none of the captors with an intact spine. The survivors fled towards the hills. Corax remained. Less than an hour after the betrayal began, the battlefield had contracted around him. The retreat routes were closing. Traitor formations poured into the space abandoned by the Raven Guard, killing the wounded and firing upon anything that moved. Thousands converged upon the lone black figure still crossing the corpse fields. Bolter fire followed Corax into the sky. Shells struck his greaves and shattered feathers from his flight assembly. A Lascanon beam passed close enough to turn the blood on his armor into steam. His damaged turbine failed. Corax fell. He struck the roof of a wrecked rhino, crushed it inward, and rolled from the vehicle as autocannon rounds tore it apart. Warning sigils burned across his retinal display. His flight pack had become dead weight. Enemy range markers multiplied through the smoke. He rose with his claw extended. A new sound entered the battle. Engines. A Thunderhawk descended through the fire-streaked sky, its black hull wounded and burning. The gunship came down too steeply, rolling beneath streams of tracer fire. Its dorsal cannon hammered a Sons of Horus formation into fragments. Wing-mounted weapons raked the ground ahead of Corax, blasting traitors apart and carving a landing zone through the dead. "Lord Corax," Alvarex Mound's voice sounded over the vox, controlled, almost calm. "Your transport has arrived. You were ordered to withdraw. I interpreted the order as applying to officers possessing less valuable cargo. The Thunderhawk struck the ground hard enough to burst one landing strut. Its assault ramp crashed down among corpses. "Maun," Corax said. "Lift. Now." Negative. World Eaters charged through the burning wreckage. The Thunderhawk's heavy bolters opened fire, sawing warriors in half. One traitor reached the ramp with his abdomen missing and dragged himself forward on his hands until a Raven Guard gunner crushed his skull beneath an armored heel. "Strike, Captain." "The ramp remains empty, my lord." Targeting warnings screamed across the channel. Corax ran. He crossed the landing zone as shells burst around him, boarded the gunship, and turned at the top of the ramp. Maun ordered immediate ascent. The engines howled, incinerating corpses and igniting pools of promethium beneath the craft. The Thunderhawk climbed. Corax did not close the ramp. Below him, the Urgal depression burned like the mouth of an opened furnace. Thousands of Raven Guard lay among the dead. Some still fought. Black-armored figures vanished beneath closing masses of red, iron, and midnight blue. The backwash of the gunship spread fire through their bodies, creating a pyre vast enough for a murdered legion. Corax watched until smoke concealed them. "Every soul below has purchased a debt," he said. No one answered. "I will collect it." The first autocannon shells struck the Thunderhawk's flank. Armor plates tore free and vanished into the darkness. A second burst punched through the troop compartment, bisecting a Raven Guard gunner and painting the bulkhead with his organs. Lascannon fire burned along the starboard wing. Warning spirits shrieked through the Vox grills. "Enemy interceptor astern," the pilot called. A missile struck. The wing vanished in an eruption of armor, fuel, and flame. The Thunderhawk rolled violently. Corax locked one hand around a restraint rail as warriors and pieces of warriors were flung across the compartment. The canopy exploded inward. Armor glass scythed through the cockpit, reducing the pilot and co-pilot to wet ruin against their harnesses. Maun tore himself from his command throne and forced his way forward. Burning cables lashed across his armor. He ripped the dead pilot from the controls, leaving the warrior's severed hands clenched around them. "We are descending," Maun said. The ground filled the forward view. Maun seized manual control. The Thunderhawk fell beyond the main killing ground, trailing burning fuel and fragments of its own hull. Maun fought the ruined craft all the way down, firing the remaining thrusters in staggered bursts. The gunship struck black earth, bounced, and ploughed through a field of loyalist corpses. Bodies burst beneath its keel. Broken armor and human remains churned in its wake. The fuselage split when it struck the ridge. Corax awoke beneath burning metal. He heaved a section of hull aside and crawled into the night, his armor cracked, his flight pack destroyed. Behind him, the cockpit burned. He returned to it. Maun hung within his restraints, wounded but alive. Corax tore open the cockpit, broke the harness, and dragged the strike captain clear moments before the fuel cells ignited. Far to the west, red-armored figures reached the wreckage. Their howls rolled from ridge to ridge. Deeper within the ruins of Istvan, Angron raised his head as confirmation reached him. The nails bit into his skull. Pain became heat. Heat became need. "Seal the hills," he snarled. "Burn the sky. Break every stone." A captain dared to ask whether the Raven Lord was truly alive. Angron's chain axe entered beneath the warrior's jaw and emerged through the crown of his skull. "He lives," Angron said, wrenching the weapon free in a storm of blood and brain matter. "And Corax belongs to me." The Thunderhawk burned behind them like a funeral pyre. Its broken fuselage had come to rest against the ridge, with the cockpit buried in black earth, and the starboard wing scattered across 1/2 kilometer of corpse-strewn ground. Flames consumed the troop compartment. Ammunition cooked within the wreck, bolt shells bursting in staccato succession and firing molten fragments through the night. Corax carried Alvarex Maun beneath one arm. The strike captain's left leg dragged uselessly behind him. Armor glass protruded from his thigh and abdomen, each shard vibrating with the distant thunder of artillery. Blood leaked from beneath his breastplate in a steady ribbon. One eye lens had failed, exposing a face burned raw by the Thunderhawk's destruction. Maun remained conscious. "My lord," he rasped, "you may put me down. I may. The enemy will follow my blood." Yes. Corax did not put him down. The Raven Lord climbed the ridge, while burning debris fell around him. His ruined flight pack hung across his shoulders, like the carcass of some mechanical bird. One turbine was crushed. The other released intermittent bursts of oily vapor, and the pinion veins had been stripped to jagged spars. His left lightning claw was dead. His remaining claw dripped with blood that hissed whenever it touched the cooling earth. Beyond the ridge, figures emerged from the darkness. Corax lowered Maun and extended his talons. The newcomers stopped. Black armor, white shoulder guards, raven insignia almost hidden beneath ash and blood. A legionary raised one hand in the old gesture of the Lycaean prisoners, fingers closed except for the smallest, held straight to signify an unbroken chain link concealed within a fist. Corax answered in kind. The warriors approached. There were 17 of them. 3 carried wounded brothers. 2 had lost their helmets. 1 had lost his lower jaw and breathed through a tube inserted into the ruin of his throat. Their warplate had been torn open by bolt impacts, chain blades and shrapnel. None possessed an undamaged weapon. "Designation," Corax said. "7th Battalion, 16th Company," replied the foremost warrior. "Sergeant Oren Sef." "How many?" Sef's voice faltered. 17 standing, 4 carried. We began the withdrawal with 111. Corax looked past them. The valley beyond was dark except for burning wreckage and the intermittent flare of weapons. Vox traffic moved through his helm as broken cries and static. Raven Guard called for extraction craft that no longer existed. Iron Hands officers demanded coordinates from command structures already dead. Salamanders recited the names of fallen brothers, while enemies closed upon them. "Direction of movement?" Corax asked. "West, Lord. The ravines divide beyond the basalt teeth. We encountered another Talon before the last bombardment. They meant to follow the lower channel. Did they carry wounded?" 7. "Then we take the lower channel." Sef glanced at Maun. "The World Eaters are already there. All the more reason they will not expect us." More survivors appeared as Corax led them away from the wreck. They came by pairs and broken squads, guided by the old shadow cant, passing through frequencies the traitors had not yet deciphered. Some crawled from beneath corpses. Others emerged from crevices where they had remained motionless, while enemy patrols passed within arm's reach. By the time the burning Thunderhawk had vanished behind the ridge, Corax had gathered 183 legionaries. 31 could not walk unaided. 11 had no functioning ranged weapon. The remainder possessed between them fewer than 300 bolt shells. Corax ordered every magazine surrendered for inspection. The legionaries formed a loose circle in the ravine, while sergeants counted ammunition by touch. Their armor displays had become unreliable. Tactical runes flickered or showed enemy formations where only corpses lay. The electromagnetic storm above the battlefield had poisoned Auspec's returns, and the wreckage falling from orbit filled every channel with shrieking interference. Sef presented the count. 276 standard mass-reactive rounds, 19 Kraken penetrators, 7 plasma flasks, 12 frag grenades, 4 crack grenades, 2 melter bombs. Blades? Enough. Corax looked at the darkened warriors around him. Bolter fire is now reserved for officers, armored vehicles and targets that cannot be killed by hand. No volleys, no suppression fire. Every shell must purchase a death that steel cannot. One legionary glanced at the chainsword clutched in his fist. Half its teeth were missing. "And when the blades fail," he asked, "use the broken weapon. And after that, use stone." Nobody questioned him again. They began moving before the count had been completed. The ravine narrowed until 2 warriors could barely walk abreast. Corax placed the wounded in the center, guarded by those whose weapons retained ammunition. Able warriors ranged ahead and behind. They used no lumens, their helm lenses adjusted to the imperfect darkness, rendering the world in shades of green, grey, and spectral white. The night beyond the main killing ground contained 1,000 separate wars. World Eaters moved through the gorges without lights or coherent formation. They followed sound, blood, and the spasms of the butcher's nails. Their chain axes announced them long before they appeared, engines revving in anticipation. Some howled challenges into the darkness. Others struck their weapons against the ravine walls, filling the stone corridors with shrieking sparks. The sons of Horus hunted with greater discipline. Their squads advanced behind overlapping auspex sweeps. They used cybernetic hounds to follow the scent of leaking blood and reactor discharge. Their officers spoke in brief commands and closed escape routes rather than charging every contact. Word-bearers had claimed the valleys farther south. Their burning icons rose above the ridges like funeral beacons. Chants drifted upon the poisoned wind, deep voices repeating phrases in languages never spoken beneath the Emperor's rule. Corax passed close enough to one valley to see prisoners chained beneath an iron scripture wheel. The word-bearers had removed the Loyalists' armor piece by piece. Skin hung from hooks around the altar. One salamander still lived, despite having been opened from throat to pelvis. His fused ribs had been spread with mechanical clamps, exposing the organs beating inside his chest. A red-armored priest reached into the wound and raised the warrior's secondary heart above his head, while the congregation roared its devotion. Corax stopped. Maun leaned against Seth, blood running from his wounded leg. "We cannot reach them," the strike captain said. Corax watched the priest crush the heart in his gauntlet. No. The words seemed to cost him flesh. He turned away. Every route from the Urgal depression had become a channel through which the traitors poured. The supposed avenues of escape were killing lanes prepared before the first Loyalist drop pod had touched the earth. Corax understood the intelligence required to plan such a betrayal. Supply dumps, landing grounds, command frequencies and withdrawal corridors had all been studied. Horus had known how each legion would react when surrounded. He had accounted for honor. He had accounted for rage. He had not accounted for prisoners who had once overthrown a moon. Far behind them, Angron stood within the wreckage of the Thunderhawk. The Red Angel's armor was pale no longer. Blood covered him from the bronze collar of the nails to the soles of his boots. Gore had dried in the chain teeth of his axes. One weapon idled against his shoulder, while the other hung loosely at his side. His sons surrounded him, growling and pacing. They had found blood leading west. They had found Raven Guard footprints. They had not found Corax. The nails pulsed. Each metallic tendril driven into Angron's brain rewarded stillness with torment. Pain crawled across the inside of his skull. It tightened behind his eyes and spread down his spine until every breath felt like a hook dragged through his nerves. Corax had denied him. That was the wound. Not a talon through flesh, not a blade against bone. Refusal. The Raven Lord had looked across the killing ground, seen Angron's legion descending upon him, and chosen escape. He had turned the war into whispered signals, false trails and shadows. He had taken the clean simplicity of slaughter and fouled it with patience. Cowardice, the nails told Angron. Yet beneath the pain, some buried remnant of the gladiator recognized the method. The high riders of Nuceria had called it cowardice when slaves poisoned wells, murdered overseers in their sleep, and vanished into the mountains. They had demanded that rebels face armored soldiers upon open ground. Angron had learned that tyrants named every weapon dishonorable except the weapons they controlled. Corax had learned the same lesson beneath different masters. The recognition deepened Angron's hatred. "He is moving west," said Captain Caudron, approaching through the wreckage. Our scouts have located several trails. Several? The Raven Guard are dividing. Then follow all of them. Our companies are dispersed across the hills. The ground is unstable. The orbital debris has blinded the auger stations. Angron turned his head. Caudron's hand tightened around his chain axe. "We will follow all of them," the captain said. The nails eased for the instant before Angron killed something. He let the instant pass. "Bring him to me," Angron said. "Alive enough to understand." Caudron bowed and withdrew. Angron looked into the darkness. Somewhere beyond the ridge, Corax was turning defeat into rebellion. The Red Angel smiled. The expression exposed teeth painted red to the gums. In the western ravines, the first of the wounded asked to be left behind. His name was Narvan. A shell fragment had entered below his right arm and passed through both lungs. Apothecaries had sealed the wound, but blood continued filling his chest. Every breath came as a bubbling growl through his vox grill. 2 legionaries carried him between them. "Lord," Narvan said when Corax came near, "I have 3 grenades." "2," said one of his bearers. "The 3rd was expended at the ridge. 2 are sufficient." "For what?" "To close this passage. I can hold the enemy while the legion moves." Corax examined the warrior. Narvan could survive another hour, perhaps 2. He would never fight at full strength again without treatment beyond anything available on Istvan. The tactical answer was obvious. "No," Corax said. Narvan's breathing rattled. "I am already dead. You are moving. My brothers carry me. They choose to. I slow them." Corax leaned close enough that their helmets almost touched. "Our brothers betrayed us today. We will not commemorate that treachery by learning its habits before dawn. Then others may die for me. Others may die for any of us. That is what the word legion means." Narvan bowed his head. The march continued. The first orbital wreckage fell moments later. Night became day. A burning fragment crossed the heavens from east to west, vast enough that Corax first mistook it for an intact warship descending under power. Flames wrapped a hull section several kilometers long. Gun decks, armor belts, and cathedral spires remained visible within the inferno. Frozen bodies streamed behind it. Thousands of crewmen had been torn from ruptured compartments before the atmosphere caught the wreck. They fell as black shapes surrounded by white vapor, tumbling alongside macro cannon housings and slabs of molten armor. The fragment passed over the ravine. Its heat ignited cloth and exposed flesh. Stone cracked along the cliff walls. Legionaries threw themselves over the wounded as the wreck struck beyond the western horizon. The impact lifted the world. The ground rose beneath Corax and hurled him into the ravine wall. Warriors weighing more than half a ton became toys in the shockwave. Bodies struck stone hard enough to split ceramite. Narvan and his bearers disappeared beneath a collapsing shelf. The air arrived afterwards. It came as a wall of dust, fire, and shredded metal. Corax locked his claw into the rock and held fast while debris screamed past. A length of starship conduit impaled a Raven Guard through the chest and nailed him upright to the cliff. Molten fragments fell like rain, burning holes through armor and flesh. Then came the dead. Frozen corpses shattered upon the rocks. Limbs burst from torsos. Heads exploded against pauldrons, spraying ice crystals, blood, and splinters of skull. One mortal crewman struck a legionary face first and disintegrated across his armor in a red cloud. Corax pulled himself from the wall. The ravine had changed shape. Half the passage was buried. 5 warriors were dead. 9 more were trapped. World-eater howls sounded behind them. The enemy had survived the impact. Corax found Maun beneath a slab of stone. The strike captain pushed it aside before his Primarch reached him. "They are following the blood," Maun said. Corax saw the red trail running from Maun's leg through the dust. "Good." The Raven Guard withdrew beneath an overhanging shelf, weakened by the shockwave. Corax sent scouts ahead, then ordered the wounded carried through. The last 2 breaching charges were placed inside fractures running through the rock. Maun understood first. "You have made me bait. You objected to being carried. I object to the lack of recognition. Bait of my caliber merits a title. Survive, and I will consider one." The World Eaters entered the ravine at a run. There were more than 60 of them, led by a pack captain wearing a cloak made from strips of black armor seals and human skin. Their chain axes tore sparks from the walls. They saw the blood. They saw the tracks. They charged beneath the shelf. Seth triggered the charges. The cliff came down. Stone swallowed the first ranks and crushed warriors beneath thousands of tons of basalt. Chain axes screamed briefly under the rubble. Dust filled the passage until Corax could see nothing beyond the targeting outlines inside his helm. He entered the collapse before the dust settled. His sons followed. The surviving World Eaters welcomed them with laughter. There was no room to shoot, no room to maneuver. The ravine became a place of knives, fists, and teeth. A Raven Guard drove a combat blade through a damaged gorget and soared sideways until the World Eater's throat opened. Another hooked his fingers into an enemy's eye lenses and pulled. The helmet came free with strips of face still caught inside it. Seth fought with the broken remains of his chainsword. Its motor had died, but he swung the weapon as a club. The jagged teeth broke a World Eater's jaw, then entered the exposed mouth. Seth struck again and again until teeth, bone, and grey brain matter packed the weapon's dead chain housing. Corax found the pack captain pinned beneath a slab. Only the warrior's head and one arm remained free. "Coward," the captain snarled. "Release me." Corax placed one hand against the side of his helmet. The World Eater laughed. Corax tightened his grip. Ceramite creaked. The laughter became a grunt, then a scream as the helmet slowly folded inward. Corax kept the enemy Vox channel open. Every surviving World Eater heard the captain's skull fracture piece by piece. Bone cracked. Eye lenses burst. Blood ran from the grill in thick ropes. Corax did not stop until the head collapsed between his fingers. The remaining World Eaters died listening. Before dawn, Corax left the safest route 3 times. Each time he followed faint shadow count transmissions into the surrounding ravines. Each time Maun argued against it. Corax returned first with 12 warriors, then with 5, then with a single apothecary carrying 7 progenoid glands in a blood-filled preservation flask. 9 Raven Guard died during those recoveries. When Corax prepared to leave again, Maun seized his arm. A Primarch cannot be traded for scattered legionaries. Corax looked at the hand upon his armor. Maun released him, but did not retreat. "We lose warriors every time you search," the strike captain said. "You are risking the Legion to recover fragments of it." "A legion is fragments. My lord, it is not a banner. It is not a tally entered upon a strategium slate. It is not the word you use when asking me to abandon the men from whom it is made." Maun's burned face tightened. "There will come a point when we cannot carry everyone." "Yes. And then?" Corax looked toward the dark ravines. "Then I will decide who dies. Not fear, not exhaustion. Me." The first light of Istvan's dawn found them entering the Ilium rifts. The land split into a maze of jagged channels, caves, and broken shelves. Electromagnetic interference intensified between the stone walls. Vox signals faded. Auspex returns dissolved into meaningless ghosts. Other bands emerged from the ash. They carried wounded brothers, empty weapons, and gene seed cut from the dead. Some had painted their armor with mud and clotted blood. Others wore pieces stripped from traitor corpses. Every group had a story written across its plate. The dead had stories too. Corax found trails that ended beneath piles of butchered black armor. Raven Guard corpses had been nailed to the stone by their own combat blades. Severed heads decorated chain axe hafts thrust into the ground. One body had been opened from groin to throat and filled with the spent casings of the shells that had killed his brothers. Corax walked among them without speaking. Behind him, nearly 200 survivors became more as other shadows entered the rifts. Upon a distant ridge, Angron watched the black figures disappear into the broken land. A captain warned him that the terrain was collapsing. Another spoke of further orbital impacts. A third dared to estimate the casualties required to scour every ravine. Angron killed the third. His axe opened the captain from shoulder to hip. The corpse fell in 2 steaming pieces, organs spilling between them. Angron kicked the upper half towards his waiting sons. "Eat," he said. World Eaters descended upon the body. The Red Angel faced the Ilium rifts as the sky burned above him. "Seal every road, break every hill, fill the valleys with the dead." The nails hammered the command into the meat of his brain. "Corax comes to me," Angron said, "or I grind this world to dust around his bones." The dead continued arriving after the living had stopped counting them. They came down into the Ilium rifts upon the shoulders of their brothers, dragged by ammunition belts, cloak cords, and lengths of fiber cable. Some were whole enough to resemble warriors asleep within ruined armor. Others were collections of black ceramite gathered around whatever flesh remained attached to the Legion's gene seed. The living came by the same paths. They emerged from the chemical fog in 2s and 3s, weapons raised until challenge and countersign were exchanged. Squads appeared without sergeants. Sergeants came without squads. A captain of the 19th Legion staggered into the rifts, commanding 4 warriors from 3 separate companies, none of whom had served beneath him before the massacre. Every arrival brought a different account of the dying ground. The Iron Hands had fought on after decapitation, their command structure collapsing around the death of Ferrus Manus. The Salamanders had burned within encirclements of their own making, refusing to yield while ammunition remained. Raven Guard formations had disappeared beneath artillery fire, only for scattered survivors to crawl from the glassed earth hours later. No account ended in victory. Corax listened to each report without visible reaction. He stood beneath a leaning wall of volcanic stone, while legionaries passed before him. His armor remained cracked from the Thunderhawk's destruction. The ruined flight assembly had been removed, leaving scorched attachment points across his back. One lightning claw hung dead upon his left vambrace. The surviving weapon had been cleaned, yet darkness remained within the joints, where blood had dried too deeply to scrape free. Names were spoken, companies were declared, numbers were entered upon slates, already slick with blood. By the end of the second day, the Legion had counted more than 900 warriors capable of bearing arms. By the third, the number had doubled. During the fourth night, 3 separate reconnaissance bands arrived from the western ravines, bringing wounded, salvaged ammunition and a standard scorched almost beyond recognition. The banner had belonged to a company that no longer existed. Corax ordered it retained. The tally approached 3,000 by the 5th day. It never became certain. Scouts moved beyond the rifts and did not always return before the next count. Isolated bands transmitted fragments of shadow count from terrain already occupied by the enemy. Warriors judged combat capable in the morning collapsed by nightfall as damaged organs failed beneath their armor. Others rose from the apothecary's stone tables with new plates riveted across their bodies and returned to the line without being added to any formal strength report. The Legion existed as an approximation. 3,000 shadows, perhaps more, perhaps already fewer. Every company had been mutilated. Some retained captains, centurions, and standard bearers, but possessed no line legionaries to receive their commands. Others numbered dozens of warriors and were led by the last surviving battle brother who remembered the company's designation. One such warrior stood before Corax during the 5th gathering. His name was Helion Var. He had entered the rifts carrying the severed hand of his captain because the gauntlet contained the company's command codes. His own rank markings identified him as a line legionary. "You claim command of the 43rd Company," Corax said. "I remember its order of battle, Lord." "How many remain?" 6. "Officers?" None. Veterans? None. Specialists? One legionary trained upon a Nuncio Vox. The device is destroyed. Corax looked at the 5 warriors standing behind Var. Their armor carried fragments of the same company mark beneath soot and impact scars. The 43rd Company no longer exists, Corax said. Var's helmet turned fractionally. My lord? It died in the Urgol Depression. The words moved through the cavern like a blade. Around Corax stood the surviving representatives of dozens of broken formations. Several stiffened. A veteran whose left pauldron still bore the faded sigil of an assault company stepped forward. With respect, Lord, a company exists while one of its warriors carries its name. A name does not fire a bolter. It preserves what was lost. Nothing preserves the dead. The veteran's gauntlet tightened around the pommel of his blade. Corax regarded him in silence until the warrior lowered his hand. The order of battle that descended upon Istvan is gone, the Primarch continued. Captains command warriors they cannot reach. Sergeants carry titles inherited from corpses. Heavy weapons remain with squads incapable of moving them. Assault troops possess no functioning flight packs, while reconnaissance cadres carry ammunition they cannot use. He walked among them. Heraldry will not save us. Memory will not save us. Pride will kill us more efficiently than the traitors. Var looked down at the severed command gauntlet in his hands. What are we then? One weapon. Corax stopped before him. I will shape it according to what remains. The reorganization began before the council dispersed. Warriors were separated by mobility, armor integrity, ammunition, and battlefield function. Surviving heavy support, legionaries were gathered around the few serviceable missile launchers, plasma weapons, and auto-cannon systems recovered from the dead. Reconnaissance specialists were assigned to mobile claws, regardless of former company. Legionaries with damaged legs or unstable reactor cores became part of the Rift's defensive strength. The wounded protested least. Veterans protested most. Corax permitted the objections to be spoken. He accepted none of them. Old bonds were severed and remade. Company colors disappeared beneath mud. Rank became subordinate to usefulness. A captain whose lungs had been scarred by chemical fire surrendered field command to a sergeant who could still run. Alvarex Maun watched the process from a ledge overlooking the lower caverns. His injured leg had been enclosed within a crude brace made from Thunderhawk control struts. Armor-glass wounds crossed his abdomen beneath layers of sealant and salvaged plate. He could stand without assistance, but every step tightened the burnt flesh across his side. Corax joined him as the Legion moved below. You should be resting, the Primarch said. I rested while the apothecaries removed pieces of our aircraft from my organs. You threatened to shoot one of them. He attempted to call the procedure complete, while I could still feel the cockpit inside me. Maun watched a column of wounded descend into the deeper passages. What command have you devised for a master of descent who can no longer descend? You will hold the refuge. Maun looked towards him. A punishment, then. You will control casualty movement, recovered stores and communications equipment. Every surface patrol will report through you. Every entrance will have a defense plan. Every warrior judged incapable of mobile operations will fall under your command. I once directed planetary assaults from the upper atmosphere. Now you will count corpses underground. Maun's burned mouth twitched. At last, promotion. Corax almost smiled. The expression never formed. Scouts had discovered the chambers during the 4th night. The entrance lay behind a wall of fractured basalt, where an orbital impact had opened a passage descending beneath the natural stone. The first Raven Guard inside believed they had entered a lava tube. Then their Auspex units failed. Not malfunctioned. Failed. Displays dimmed. Vox links dissolved into faint static. Armor spirits issued conflicting warnings before falling silent. The temperature remained constant, despite the fires raging across the surface. Tech Marine Karlan, led Corax into the depths. The passage opened into a chamber too large for their helm lumens to illuminate. Its walls were smooth, black, and without joints. No chisel marks scarred them. No mineral veins crossed their surface. The floor curved downward by a degree so slight that the eye resisted recognizing it. Kalen pressed a diagnostic probe. Against the wall, the instrument produced no reading. Composition? Corax asked. Unknown. Stone? No. Metal? No. Then give me an answer that is useful. The tech marine withdrew the probe. It resists electromagnetic transmission. Auspex returns fragment at the threshold. Vox signals cannot cross more than 20 meters. The material appears to absorb active scans rather than reflect them. An apothecary standing nearby removed his helmet. His face was pale beneath implanted cabling. The pressure has lessened. Corax looked at him. What pressure? The sensation of observation. It began during the betrayal, a presence behind thought. It is absent here. Psychic. I am no librarian, Lord. The 19th Legion had once possessed warriors capable of answering such questions. Corax had obeyed the decree of Nicaea. The Librarius had been disbanded. Its members returned to their companies. Most were now dead. Corax placed his surviving claw against the black wall. The talons made no mark. Xenos construction, Kalen said, or something older. Does its origin alter its usefulness? No, Lord. Then we have no need to name its makers. The refuge spread beneath the rifts in vast, interconnected chambers. Some passages ended in smooth walls. Others descended until the Raven Guard lacked cables sufficient to measure their depth. There were no inscriptions, mechanisms, or remains to explain what had created the place. Corax ordered the Legion to occupy only the upper levels. Every natural entrance was concealed with stone, corpse ash, and fragments of wreckage. False tracks led towards dead caverns rigged with explosives. Several surface fissures were widened deliberately and marked with traces of Raven Guard blood. Behind them waited collapsible passages designed to bury pursuers. The true approaches were guarded without lumens and without vox. Runners carried messages through the deeper chambers. For the first time since the betrayal, the Raven Guard possessed a place where the traitors' guns could not find them. They filled it with the spoils of the dead. Salvage parties returned to the surface during orbital storms and periods of black rain. They stripped corpses regardless of allegiance. Loyalist dead surrendered armor seals, reactor cells, and gene seed. Traitors yielded weapons, ammunition, and functioning plate. The Legion changed color. Black Mark IV armor acquired iron-grey greaves taken from iron warriors, crimson vambraces stripped from word-bearers, and green plates recovered from salamanders, who no longer needed them. Older Mark II sections were riveted across shattered modern suits with rows of bonding studs. Night Lord's trophies were scraped clean of flayed skin and fitted to Raven Guard harnesses. Nothing matched. Everything functioned. Tigris pattern bolt guns were rebuilt from incompatible parts. Barrels from one weapon were joined to receivers from another. Targeting systems were bypassed. Trigger mechanisms were replaced with exposed manual linkages. Captured chain axes had their teeth removed and fitted into damaged chainswords. Each weapon carried the heraldry of its previous owner. Some Raven Guard erased it, others did not. Corax passed through one armory and found Sergeant Seth cleaning a Sons of Horus bolt pistol. The eye of Horus remained engraved upon its casing. "You have left the mark," Corax said. "The weapon killed 3 of my squad before I took it." "And that earns remembrance?" "It earns ownership." Corax looked at the pistol. "Use it until the barrel fails, then melt the mark into ammunition." The first strategic council gathered on the 6th day. There was no table. The surviving officers stood in a circle within one of the black chambers, while Mound's runners held shielded lumens above tactical maps scratched onto salvaged hull plating. Arguments began before Corax arrived. A captain from the surviving reconnaissance companies demanded an attempt to reach the Western Heights. Auspec's ghosts suggested other loyalist formations still moved there. He believed thousands might be recovered if the Legion marched at once. Another officer wanted to assemble every functioning Vox and broadcast towards orbit. If a single loyalist vessel survived, it must know we are here, he said. If a traitor vessel hears us first. Maun asked, then it learns we live. It already knows. That is why it is searching. The captain pointed towards the map. We cannot remain buried while our brothers die outside. We cannot rescue corpses, Maun replied. Corax entered. The argument ceased. He studied the markings representing enemy patrols, bombardment zones, and possible survivor trails. No signal will be sent, he said. The Vox captain began to object. Corax continued over him. The fleet is destroyed, scattered or driven from the system. Traitor warships control the approaches. A transmission will reveal this refuge and achieve nothing else. He looked towards the western routes. We will not march in strength. The enemy expects survivors to gather. Mass movement will give them the battle they desire. Then we wait? Asked the reconnaissance captain. No. Corax placed one talon against the map. Horus believes the massacre has ended. He expects certainty. He expects the 19th Legion to become a number entered among his victories. His claw scored a line through the symbol marking the Urgol depression. We will deny him certainty. The officers watched him. Every patrol that fails to return will require another patrol. Every convoy destroyed will divert armor from the wider war. Every severed communications link will force the traitors to guard ground they believed conquered. They will search ravines, garrison ruins, and escort supplies because 3,000 warriors refused to die when commanded. The reconnaissance captain lowered his head. Our objective is survival. Survival is the method. And victory? Corax's black eyes moved across them. Victory is making our existence expensive. He promised them no rescue. He spoke no word of reinforcement. He did not tell them the Emperor knew they lived. He gave them vengeance with measurable purpose, and it was enough. The first World Eater's search party entered the northern ravines before sunset. Raven Guard scouts watched 27 traitors follow a false trail towards the rifts. They allowed the enemy to pass 3 concealed positions before sealing the gorge behind them with a silent rockfall. The forward route closed moments later. No bolter was fired. World Eaters were dragged into fissures by fiber cables looped around their throats. Combat blades entered beneath their helmets and through armpit seals. One warrior disappeared into a crack barely wide enough for his shoulders, pulled by 6 Raven Guard, while his boots gouged trenches in the stone. The battle lasted 4 minutes. The World Eater's captain survived. Corax found him pinned beneath 3 dead sons of Angron. His chain-axe arm was trapped, but his free hand still clawed at the stone. The captain laughed when he recognized the Primarch. Angron will wear your skull. Corax removed the trapped arm at the shoulder. He did it with one pull. The captain's laughter became a scream. Blood struck the ravine wall in pulsing arcs. Corax caught the remaining wrist. Tyrants always mistake noise for power, he said. He severed the hand. The World Eater thrashed beneath the corpses, unable to reach the wounds, unable to rise. Corax disabled the warrior's armor sealants and left his Vox open. The bodies of the search party were dragged underground. Their severed heads were carried west and placed along a false trail, each facing towards the distant hills. The captain remained alive in the empty ravine. His screams continued until the next patrol found him. Far from Istvan, Marcus Valerius awakened with his hand closed around the throat of his adjutant. The prefector released him at once. The chamber aboard Deliverance's orbital station was cold and dark. Warning bells sounded somewhere beyond the bulkhead. Valerius tasted blood where he had bitten through his tongue. He remembered black wings burning beneath a red giant. He remembered 3,000 shadows buried under stone. Commander Branna Nev listened to the account without patience. "You have not slept properly since the fleet departed," Branna said. "Return to your quarters. Corax is alive. You saw a bird. I saw the Primarch. In a dream. In a warning." Branna turned towards the armor glass, beyond which deliverance hung in darkness. "You are an Imperial Army commander, Prefector, not a diviner." Valerius rose from the medici couch. "This is not the first dream." Branna looked back. Valerius wiped the blood from his mouth. "It is the 7th. By the 8th day, the enemy had begun to reveal its weaknesses, not weakness of arms. The traitors possessed armor, aircraft, artillery, ammunition, and the command of the skies. Their warships remained above Istvan like executioners gathered around a block. Their patrols crossed the wastes in numbers sufficient to crush the surviving Raven Guard by weight alone. Their weakness was pride. Corax stood within a lightless chamber beneath the Ilium rifts, while reconnaissance reports were carried to him by runners. No functioning Vox transmission penetrated the unknown black walls. Every message arrived spoken, memorized, and stripped of anything a captured warrior might betray. Sergeant Seth delivered the final report. "The World Eaters are moving in concentrations of several hundred, Lord. No reconnaissance screen, no rear security worthy of the name. They follow noise, blood trails, and any contact they believe might lead to you." "They believe all quarry leads to me," Corax said. "Yes, Lord. The sons of Horus? Smaller hunter cadres, disciplined. They have cyber mastiffs. That earned the attention of every officer present. The machines were old products of the Legion's Astartes armories, quadrupedal constructs of steel, vat-grown muscle, and sharpened sensory organs. They could follow the chemical trace of blood across bare rock. They could identify the electromagnetic signature of damaged power armor hours after its owner had passed. "Have they entered the rifts?" Maun asked. "Not deeply," Seth replied. "They lost 3 beasts in the northern channels. The handlers withdrew rather than expend the remainder." Maun leaned upon the metal brace enclosing his injured leg. "Sensible. A disagreeable trait in an enemy." "The word-bearers?" Corax asked. "They gather the dead, loyalist and traitor. Their patrols vanish into the southern valleys with prisoners and do not emerge until the fires begin." "Ritual sites," said Apothecary Carven. Seth nodded. "They have abandoned several viable search routes to protect them." "And the Iron Warriors?" The scout indicated a line cut across the salvaged hull plate serving as their map. "They remain mounted. Rhinos, predators, land raiders, and infantry support. They move between the western corpse fields and the lower passes. Their commanders appear unwilling to share discoveries with neighboring forces." Corax studied the map. The traitors had surrounded themselves with strength and divided that strength according to vanity. The World Eaters wanted the kill. The sons of Horus wanted proof of efficient command. The Word-bearers wanted sacrifices for whatever gods had replaced duty. The Iron Warriors wanted victory to belong to calculation and iron. Each believed the other's crude. Each concealed intelligence to preserve his own glory. A unified army would have sealed the rifts within days. What remained upon Istvan was not an army. It was a gathering of rival predators, each circling the same wounded prey and snarling whenever another drew close. Corax placed one talon upon the western route. "This column, how often does it pass?" "Every second day," Seth said. "It alters its exact course, but not its destination. It replenishes fuel near the ruins of an Imperial Army depot, then searches north before returning south. Command: 2 Centurions. The senior commands from a land raider. The second rides with the rear armor. They transmit separately and contradict one another whenever a target is reported." "How many days have you watched them?" 3. "Watch them for 3 more." A younger Raven Guard officer stepped forward. His name was Calvus Ran, and fewer than 40 warriors remained from the assault company he had inherited. "My lord, we know their route. Every day we observe them is another day in which they hunt our brothers. Then use the day to learn how they hunt. They have already murdered thousands, and anger will not resurrect one. Rand's jaw tightened beneath his helmet. We possess the means to strike now. We possess men, Corax said. I will not spend them merely to soothe you. Silence followed. The Raven Lord turned. Back to the map. Learn their intervals. Learn which vehicles carry fuel. Learn which officers expose themselves when they believe they are safe. Learn their firing arcs and the range at which their infantry dismounts. When we attack, nothing will be left to chance. The Iron Warriors column crossed the same ground twice more before Corax permitted preparations to begin. Raven Guard scouts measured the pressure of its tracks in the ash. They marked where the lead Land Raider slowed to negotiate a narrow bend and where the last Predator accelerated to maintain formation. They observed that the senior Centurion opened his command cupola near a rise overlooking the eastern valleys. He trusted the range of his own guns more than the possibility of ambush. The second commander frequently halted the rear formation to investigate wreckage. He believed survivors might hide among the dead and refused to surrender even the smallest discovery to his superior. Their rivalry stretched the column. Corax selected the ground where it would die. The road passed between two cliff faces before widening into a basin littered with the remains of Imperial Army transports. The walls appeared solid from below, but mining tunnels from Istvan's abandoned industrial age ran through the stone. Raven Guard crawled into them, carrying scavenged charges, melter bombs and chemical explosives recovered from shattered supply vehicles. They weakened the rock without bringing it down. Shaped crack charges were buried beneath the road and concealed beneath layers of ash mixed with human fat from the corpse fields. The heat signature resembled the ruined ground around it. Melter bombs were placed inside wrecked troop carriers where their emissions would be lost among dead reactor cells. Snipers climbed the cliffs by routes no armored warrior could follow. They established overlapping fields against command cupolas, exposed gunners and tech marines moving between vehicles. False evidence was scattered beyond the basin. Boot prints indicated hundreds of Raven Guard had passed recently. Empty ration containers lay beside a concealed drainage cut. A damaged Legion standard was left half buried where any Iron Warrior's scout would discover it. The trail promised a survivor camp close enough to seize before neighboring traitor formations could interfere. The Iron Warriors arrived on the 11th day. The lead Land Raider entered first, its hull painted in hazard stripes and streaked with dried blood. Rhinos followed in disciplined intervals. Predators covered the heights with autocannon turrets, while legionaries advanced beside the vehicles. Bolters held ready. They moved like a machine. The machine was divided against itself. The rear commander halted to examine the abandoned standard. The senior Centurion ordered him forward. Their argument traveled across an unsecured command channel the Raven Guard had intercepted days before. Corax waited until the Land Raider reached the marked stone. He lowered one hand. The first shots came from the cliffs. 3 sniper rounds struck within the same heartbeat. The senior Centurion's helmet burst apart above the command cupola. The communications officer beside him lost half his head. A tech marine crossing between 2 rhinos folded as a Kraken penetrator entered beneath his shoulder guard and detonated inside his chest. Then the road exploded. Crack charges opened beneath the Land Raider. The front of the vehicle dropped into a sudden trench, its tracks spinning against empty air. The assault tank's momentum lifted its rear before the hull slammed down hard enough to rupture suspension assemblies and crush 2 escorting legionaries beneath it. Behind the final Predator, the cliff descended. Stone buried the road in a roar that drowned the first shouted commands. The rear vehicle disappeared beneath an avalanche of basalt. Its turret remained visible for an instant, still traversing, before a second collapse crushed it flat. The column became a sealed steel coffin. Raven Guard fired from the heights. Bolter rounds struck exposed commanders and heavy weapon crews. Plasma bolts splashed across rhino hatches, welding them shut as the passengers tried to emerge. Missiles descended onto fuel carriers and transformed the center of the formation into a corridor of flame. Iron Warriors died before they understood the scale of the trap. Then they understood. They did not panic. The front. Land Raider opened fire despite its shattered tracks. Lascannon beams tore through the cliff and vaporized a Raven Guard firing position. Heavy bolters swept the heights in disciplined arcs. Black armored bodies came apart beneath the stream, limbs and sections of torso tumbling down the rock face. Rhino ramps opened away from the attack. Iron Warriors disembarked into cover, formed overlapping firing lines, and returned controlled volleys. Their officers designated sectors without wasting words. Surviving Tech Marines crawled beneath vehicles to restore damaged communications. The basin changed from a grave into a fortress. Corax fell from the smoke. His ruined flight pack no longer carried him, but the Raven Guard had raised him to the height above the basin through hidden passages. He stepped from the precipice and descended more than 30 meters onto the turret of a Predator. The impact bowed the armor inward. The gunner turned his weapon towards him. Corax drove his remaining lightning claw through the turret ring. Energized talons passed through ceramite, cabling, and the gunner's abdomen. He closed his fist around spine and organs, then tore upward. The warrior came out in sections. The upper torso emerged first, still attached to the seat harness. Loops of intestine and severed cables followed. The lower body remained inside the turret, kicking against the controls as blood flooded the fighting compartment. Corax ripped open the engine housing with his dead vambrace and functioning claw. Burning components came free in his hands. He hurled them into an Iron Warrior squad disembarking from a Rhino. Promethium ignited across their armor. One warrior staggered towards him with both arms ablaze. Corax caught him by the throat and drove him head first through the Rhino's side door. The helmet split. Bone and grey matter burst across the vehicle's interior. A tank commander rose through a nearby cupola and opened fire with a pintle-mounted heavy bolter. Corax moved before the weapon completed its first cycle. The initial shells struck the Predator behind him. The Raven Lord crossed the distance in a blur of black plate, seized the commander by the face, and forced him backwards into the hatch. The warrior's shoulders caught against the rim. Corax pushed. Ceramite fractured. The Iron Warrior's torso compressed through a space too narrow to contain it. Ribs burst through the chest. The commander's abdomen ruptured, flooding the cupola with blood and pulped organs. Corax continued until the body folded completely inside, and only one arm remained hanging from the hatch. Around him, the battle hardened. Iron Warriors dragged wrecked vehicles into interlocking positions. Dreadnoughts strode from the rear transports and climbed over the dead, their autocannons raking the cliffs. Each burst struck with the force of a barrage. Raven Guard vanished in explosions of black armor and atomized flesh. A heavy bolter caught Rand's assault cadre crossing an exposed ledge. 3 warriors became pieces. One was cut through the hips and remained alive long enough to watch his legs fall into the basin before the next rounds removed his head. The Raven Guard attack stalled. The Iron Warriors had turned the wreckage into a redoubt. Firing lanes overlapped. Damaged tanks provided cover. Dreadnoughts guarded the approaches, while squads established ammunition points behind the hulls. Mound's voice reached Corax through a directional beam from the ridge. They are reforming faster than projected. I see them. Our northern assault has lost almost half its strength. Withdraw it. The enemy will expand into the opening. Let them. Corax studied the redoubt through the drifting smoke. Several wrecked rhinos lay within the defensive line. Iron Warriors wounded had been dragged behind them, where apothecaries worked beneath covering fire. The injured were protected by the hulls of their own transports. Raven Guard wounded lay nearby. Some moved, some called across the shadow cant for extraction. Corax looked at the charges concealed beneath the wreckage. He made the calculation once. Maun, my lord, detonate the inner basin. A pause followed. Our warriors remain inside the affected ground. I know. 7 are transmitting. I hear them. Mound did not argue further. The world beneath the redoubt turned white. Melter. Bombs consumed the wrecked transports. Their hulls became molten fluid. Chemical explosives followed, lifting vehicles and bodies into the air. Wounded iron warriors disappeared inside their own armor as heat cooked flesh and detonated ammunition. Raven Guard died with them. One black-armored warrior rose amid the blast, burning from the waist down, and continued firing until the second detonation tore him into fragments. The explosion showered the defenders with the remains of their brothers. Shattered armor struck like artillery fragments. Half a torso landed across an iron warrior's gun line, its exposed organs spreading over their weapons. A severed head bounced from a dreadnought's hull, leaving a red smear across its legion markings. The defensive formation opened. Corax entered the breach. "Now," he said. Raven Guard assault cadres descended from the cliffs. They struck before the iron warriors could clear the dead from their firing positions. Combat blades entered armor joints. Melter charges were pressed against dreadnought knees and detonated at arm's length. Bolters fired only where a single shell could decide the fight. Corax reached the command land raider. The assault ramp had jammed halfway open. Iron warriors inside tried to force it down, while others fired through the gap. Corax seized the ramp and pulled. Hydraulics screamed. Metal bent. He tore the entire door free and cast it aside, exposing the crew compartment. The warriors within fired together. Shells struck his breastplate, shoulder, and dead vambrace. One penetrated beneath his ribs and detonated against transhuman flesh. Blood filled his mouth. Corax entered the land raider. The killing lasted seconds. When he emerged through the ruptured roof, nothing inside remained recognizable as a legionary. The walls were coated in meat. A hand still gripped a bolter trigger, though the arm ended at the elbow. Part of a face had fused to the targeting display beneath the heat of a point-blank plasma discharge. The final iron warriors died beneath the western cliff. None fled, none surrendered. Their discipline endured until the Raven Guard cut the last warrior's throat and lowered his body onto the pile of his brothers. The basin fell silent, except for burning engines and the cries of the wounded. Corax stood among the dead, while his sons began stripping them. Bolt magazines were taken first, then grenades, armor seals, reactor cells, and medical compounds. Apothecaries opened the fallen with surgical blades, searching for Raven Guard gene seed carried as trophies. They found 43 progenoid glands, sealed inside an Iron Warrior's transport. Some still bore identification codes. Maun held one container beneath the light. They were harvesting us. They expected to use what they stole, Corax said. Can they? Not while they are dead. Food stores were removed from the vehicles. Fuel was drained into portable cells. Weapons were dismantled. The Raven Guard lacked the means to maintain captured armor, and the roads ahead would not support it. What could not be carried was destroyed. The land raiders burned until their interiors glowed. Before withdrawing, Corax ordered a captured Vox unit placed upon the command vehicle. It transmitted the same message across every traitor frequency. The tyrant's strength belongs to those brave enough to steal it. Angron reached the basin before nightfall. He walked among hundreds of dead iron warriors and saw the design of the battle in every corpse. The fallen column had not been defeated by desperation. It had been studied, divided, and executed. Corax had chosen the ground. Corax had chosen the moment. Corax had even chosen which dead would be left intact enough to identify. The Vox unit repeated its message. The tyrant's strength belongs to those brave enough to steal it. Angron tore the device from the land raider and crushed it between his hands. The nails drove deeper. A World Eater's captain approached with an estimate of Raven Guard losses. Angron struck him before the first number was spoken. Gore spread across the ruined tank. A second warrior moved too slowly to retreat and lost his head to the return swing. Others gathered around their Primarch. Angron killed until the pain receded enough for thought. Then a sound rolled across the wastes. It was neither horn nor siren. The note crawled through the earth, too low for mortal hearing and too deep for the armor's filters to erase. It vibrated within bone. Dead vehicles trembled. Blood quivered in the craters. Red beams appeared within the fog. They swept across stone, wreckage, and corpses, lingering wherever traces of heat remained. Tall shapes followed. They walked upon multiple jointed limbs, their bodies armored in black iron and brass. Horn-like arrays rose from narrow torsos. Where heads should have been, cages of red light turned from side to side. Barbed manipulators clicked beneath weapons built to cut open tanks. Traitor Mechanicum attendants came behind them, chanting streams of Binharic command. The constructs advanced towards the east, towards the Ilium rifts. The Raven Guard had learned how to deceive legionaries. The machines sent to find them possessed no pride to exploit, no anger to provoke, and no fear of the dark. Their harrowing horns sounded again. Deep beneath the mountains, every inactive Auspex unit came alive at once. The first blind hunter found Legionary Veyron because his reactor possessed a heartbeat. He had lain motionless beneath the corpses for 6 hours. 3 dead Raven Guard covered him, their cooling power armor masking the heat of his own plate. He had shut down every non-essential system, slowed both hearts, and breathed through a ruptured grill clogged with the dried blood of another warrior. His bolter lay beneath him. His combat blade rested inside his gauntlet, its point aligned with the weak seam below his gorget. He did not move when the machine entered the ravine. Its arrival was announced by the harrowing horn. The note was too deep to be called sound. It entered through stone and travelled into Veyron's bones. The dead shifted around him as dust trembled from their armor. Loose teeth clicked inside broken helmets. Blood collected in the hollows of the ground, rippled beneath the unseen pressure. The blind hunter walked upon 4 jointed limbs. Its torso rose above them like a narrow iron shrine, plated in black metal and tarnished brass. Barbed manipulators hung beneath its weapons. A cage of turning lenses occupied the place where a living thing would have carried a head. Red beams passed over the ravine. They touched the corpses and moved on. Veyron remained still. A second pulse rolled from the horn. The machine did not see the way flesh saw. It read the world through vibration, pressure, temperature, and the minute distortions caused by functioning machinery. Stone possessed one rhythm. Dead armor possessed another. A reactor possessed life. The blind hunter turned. Veyron's warning reached the rifts as 3 clicks through the buried signal wire. The machine's weapon fired. A blade of red energy crossed the corpse pile and passed through Veyron's waist. Ceramite glowed white before separating. His torso remained beneath the dead, while his legs slid down the slope. For half a second, both halves lived. Then the reactor core ruptured. The explosion consumed Veyron, the bodies hiding him and most of the wall behind them. The blind hunter emerged through the fire with molten metal running from its armor and continued east. Corax watched it from above. 3 Raven Guard lay concealed along the ridge beside him. Every suit of armor had been powered down. Their breathing tubes ran into narrow holes in the stone, carrying heat and vapor away from their positions. None had moved since before the machine entered the ravine. Sergeant Seth looked towards his Primarch. Corax raised one finger. Wait. The blind hunter paused beneath them. Its horn released another pulse. Corax felt the vibration pass through his ribs. The machine's red beams moved across the cliff, lingering upon the place where his hand pressed against the rock. He became less than shadow. The faculty had no name among the Raven Guard. It was not invisibility. Light still touched him. Dust still settled upon his armor. Yet the minds of those nearby refused to acknowledge what their senses perceived. Corax became an omission, a detail discarded before conscious thought could grasp it. The blind hunter possessed no living mind to deceive. Its lenses turned towards him. Corax
Corax did not move. After several seconds, the beams passed on. The machine continued down the ravine, following the electromagnetic spoor of a discarded reactor cell placed by Raven Guard scouts. Seth waited until it disappeared into the ash. We
should destroy it. No, it killed Veyron. And if we kill it now, we learn only that it can die. Corax rose. His sons followed the machine for most of the day. The blind hunter did not tire. It crossed broken ground without reducing speed and climbed slopes an armored vehicle could not have traversed. At regular intervals, it stopped to release a concentrated burst from its horn. Something answered. The return signal was faint, carried through frequencies fouled by orbital wreckage and chemical storms. Raven Guard instruments could barely detect it. The blind hunter received the response through an antenna buried within its brass spine, then altered course by degrees. "Handlers," Tech Marine Kalen said when Corax examined the captured readings. "The construct does not choose its search pattern independently. It relays contact data and receives revised instructions. Range? Several kilometers in this terrain, more on open ground. Can the signal be reproduced? Not yet." Corax looked towards the red glow moving through the fog below. "Can it be interrupted?" Kalen's mechanical eye narrowed. "Yes." The blind hunter reached the reactor cell at dusk. It extended a barbed limb and lifted the discarded machinery from the earth. Lenses rotated. Its horn sounded twice. A burst of data traveled west. Corax marked the interval between transmission and reply. The construct abandoned the cell and changed direction towards a patch of stone where Raven Guard had ignited a buried promethium charge earlier that day. It believed heat. It believed vibration. It believed the orders sent by its masters. Certainty governed every movement. Certainty could be deceived. The false migration began on the 23rd day. Raven Guard salvage cadres emerged from the Ilium rifts, carrying everything they wished the enemy to find. Damaged shoulder plates were scattered along western paths. Blood drained from the dead was poured into shallow footprints. Spent bolt casings marked firing positions around camps that had never existed. Heat sources were buried beneath stone and timed to awaken in sequence. Damaged reactor cells were dragged across the ground upon fiber cables. Pieces of black ceramite were fixed to weighted frames that moved whenever the wind changed. The evidence described a legion abandoning its refuge in disorder. Blind hunters found the first trail before nightfall. 3 constructs followed it west. 2 more joined them after their handlers received reports of multiple heat signatures. Their horns sounded across the wastes, each pulse answered by movement among the buried decoys. The trail led towards an Iron Warriors patrol. The Sons of Perturabo had halted beside a ruined refinery to conduct repairs. Rhinos formed a defensive arc around 2 predators and a recovery vehicle. Legionaries stood watch, while Tech Marines worked beneath portable lumen rigs. The blind hunters entered the refinery without challenge. The Iron Warriors recognized their allegiance marks and ignored them. Raven Guard triggered the buried reactors. Heat bloomed beneath the repair yard. Vibrations rolled through the ground. Damaged power cells began transmitting stolen fragments of Mechanicum identification code. The constructs stopped. Their red beams passed across the Iron Warriors. 1 Tech Marine rose from beneath a predator. "What malfunction afflicts you?" a blind hunter fired. The energy blade crossed the yard and divided the Tech Marine from shoulder to hip. Both halves fell across his tools, mechadendrites twitching in separate pools of blood. The second machine opened fire upon the rhinos. Iron Warriors died inside their transports before they could lower the assault ramps. Metal softened. Ammunition detonated. 1 vehicle burst outward, hurling burning legionaries across the refinery. The Sons of Perturabo responded with immediate discipline. Autocannons thundered. Lascanon beams struck the lead construct and tore away one of its limbs. Bolter fire hammered uselessly against black armor until a predator shell penetrated the machine's torso. The explosion scattered burning brass across the repair yard. Corax's sons attacked the handlers. The Mechanicum command cadre occupied a ridge overlooking the refinery, their attention fixed upon the corrupted data streaming from the constructs. Raven Guard emerged from the ash behind them. Combat blades opened robed backs. A priest turned, Binharic warnings screeching from his mouth, and lost both mechanical arms to a single chainsword stroke. Kalen drove a data spike through the priest's skull and into the cortical interface beneath. The priest convulsed. Binary code flooded the Tech Marine's armor. "Access established," Kalen said. "Give the machines a new command," Corax replied. The surviving blind hunters turned upon the Iron Warriors' recovery vehicles. Their horns sounded. The refinery became a storm of red light, cannon fire, and burning metal. Neither force realized the Raven Guard had departed until the last Mechanicum handler was dead and the command signals had dissolved into meaningless static. The false migration drew search forces west. The Raven Guard moved north. There, the second Iron Warriors column entered the gullies. It was larger than the first. Armored transports filled the narrow approaches. Recovery vehicles followed behind them, accompanied by ammunition carriers and mobile repair stations. Dreadnoughts strode among the column like iron gods, at least 12. Corax studied their advance from a ledge above the western channel. The dreadnoughts protected the armor from close assault. Keris pattern cannons covered the heights. Lascannons and heavy conversion beamers watched the longer approaches. Their atomantic shielding shimmered whenever falling debris struck them. A frontal attack would feed Raven Guard lives into a wall of iron. Corax attacked the column's length instead. Charges brought down the rearward path after the recovery vehicles passed. More Dathan descended upon the trapped support crews. Melter bombs opened fuel carriers. Explosions rolled forwards through the column, each vehicle igniting the next. The lead elements were allowed to continue. They entered the gullies, seeking escape from the fire behind them. Their commanders accelerated, believing speed would preserve the armored center until it reached open ground. The center lost contact with both ends. Raven Guard struck from side passages. They fired from such close range that bolt shells crossed only meters before impact. Mass reactive rounds entered visor lenses and throat seals. Grenades rolled beneath rhino tracks. Iron Warriors disembarked into passages barely wide enough to hold them. The battle became intimate. In one gorge, the dead could not fall. Raven Guard and Iron Warriors fought across a frontage no wider than a single legionary. The first warriors killed remained upright, trapped between the walls and those pressing behind them. Bodies accumulated into a barricade of locked armor. The living climbed over them. An Iron Warrior fired through the chest of his dead brother to kill the Raven Guard beyond. The shell detonated inside both corpses and sprayed the walls with lungs, bone, and strips of blackened intestine. Steam rose from the gore in the chemical cold. Sergeant Seth lost his chainsword inside an Iron Warrior's abdomen. The weapon's teeth caught upon the spine and dragged loops of viscera from the wound. Seth released it, hooked both hands beneath the traitor's gorget, and tore the helmet free. Skin came with it. The Iron Warrior's face peeled upwards, exposing teeth, eye sockets, and the red musculature beneath. Seth drove his thumbs into the empty sockets and pushed until the skull cracked against the wall. Behind him, Raven Guard forced their way over twitching bodies. Iron Warriors advanced from the opposite direction. For every meter gained, the gorge accepted another corpse. The dreadnoughts withdrew in disciplined pairs. They covered the surviving infantry as the armored column contracted towards a crater where several gullies met. Damaged vehicles were abandoned and destroyed. Wounded legionaries were carried until movement became impossible, then given weapons and left to hold intersections. By nightfall, fewer than 100 Iron Warriors remained. They formed a final ring within the crater. 12 dreadnoughts stood around them. Corax's captains gathered along the surrounding heights. Heavy weapons had clear lines into the crater, but the dreadnoughts' atomantic fields and layered armor rendered most of the Legion's remaining arsenal useless. Calvus Ran looked towards Corax. We can overwhelm them from 4 approaches. At what cost? Ran watched the dreadnought cannons traverse towards the gullies. Severe. Then we do not attack. They are trapped. So are the warriors who enter that crater. A dreadnought stepped from the ring. It was a contemptor, its broad frame painted in iron and yellow beneath impact scars. A power claw occupied one arm. A heavy cannon formed the other. Names had been inscribed across its breastplate in High Gothic, each marking a campaign from the Great Crusade, its external vox activated. Corvus. The voice emerged distorted by centuries of machinery, yet Corax recognized it. Valek. The contemptor stopped. Around the crater, weapons remained trained. We stood together beneath the towers of Oranar, ancient Valek said. Your sons entered the breach my warriors opened. I remember. You spoke then of brotherhood. I believed it. Come down and believe again. Corax stepped from the ledge. He landed upon the crater floor alone. The Iron Warriors watched him approach. The dreadnoughts adjusted their weapons, tracking his movement. Valek's cannon lowered. Perturabo warned us that sentiment would make you weak. Your Primarch mistakes bitterness for wisdom. He understands strength. He understands walls. Valek's power claw opened, and you understand flight. Not today. The contemptor attacked. Its cannon fired first. Corax was no longer where the targeting systems had predicted. The shells passed through his afterimage and struck the crater wall, turning stone and 2 concealed Raven Guard into expanding clouds of dust and meat. Valek pivoted. Corax ran directly towards him. The dreadnought systems calculated trajectories faster than a legionary could think. Its cannon traversed. Its power claw swept across the approach with enough force to crush a battle tank. Corax stepped beneath the blow. He climbed the machine as though its moving armor were a cliff. One foot struck the knee joint. His dead vambrace caught the rim of the torso plate. He vaulted onto Valek's back before the contemptor completed its turn. The power claw reached for him. Corax drove his functioning talons into the armor beside the sarcophagus. Energized blades cut through ceramite and internal plating. His hand followed. He reached into the dreadnought. Cables wrapped around his wrist. Nutrient fluid flooded from the wound. Mechanical tendons snapped beneath his fingers as Valek twisted, trying to throw him free. Corax pushed deeper. He felt the sarcophagus. He felt the mutilated warrior sealed within it. His fingers closed around flesh, tubes, and the reinforced rim of the life support cradle. Corvus, Valek said. The word was almost human. Corax tore upwards. The contemptor's back opened. Metal peeled apart. Cables whipped through the air, spraying black fluid. The ruined torso of ancient Valek emerged from the machine in a flood of nutrient slurry and ruptured organs. There were no legs. One arm ended below the shoulder. Pale flesh had grown around plugs and feeding tubes. Valek's remaining eye opened as Corax dragged him into the night. The dreadnought collapsed. Corax released the body. The ancient struck the crater floor among trailing cables and pieces of his own lungs. For one moment, the Iron Warriors forgot to fire. Their certainty broke. The Raven Guard descended from 4 gullies. Crack grenades detonated against dreadnought knees. One machine fell and crushed 3 Iron Warriors beneath its weight. Assault squads swarmed across another, fixing melter charges to the sarcophagus before leaping clear. The blast opened its torso and sprayed the warriors behind it with cooked flesh and boiling amniotic fluid. Corax moved among the dreadnoughts. He appeared within their muzzle flashes, struck, and vanished before their targeting arrays corrected. A power fist closed upon empty air. A cannon burst tore another dreadnought apart after Corax maneuvered it into the firing line. The crater became an iron slaughterhouse. Sarcophagi burst. Entombed veterans screamed through external vox grills as flames entered their life support systems. Iron warriors fought around the feet of their dying ancients until Raven Guard blades opened them at the joints. The final dreadnought attempted to climb from the crater. Corax seized its ankle and pulled it backwards. The machine struck the ground. Raven Guard swarmed over it and emptied, captured melter weapons into the rear armor until nothing remained inside but burning cables and blackened bone. Silence returned. Corax stood beside Valek's ruined Contemptor. His sons watched him. Some had seen a Primarch tear open tanks. They had watched him butcher legionaries and survive wounds that would have killed any of them. Yet the dead machine at his feet carried a different weight. The Contemptor had been nearly invulnerable. Corax had opened it with one hand. He offered no words of triumph. He looked upon the broken body of the warrior with whom he had once shared a battlefield beneath alien suns. Then he turned away. "Remove every usable shell," he said. "Strip the reactor cells and armor seals. Burn what cannot be carried." Ran stared at Valek's remains. "My lord, he knew you. They all knew us." Corax's refusal to mourn frightened them more than fury would have. The dead were stripped. The unrecoverable were burned. Beneath the pile of ruined armor at the crater's edge, one blind hunter remained functional. Its limbs had been torn away in the refinery battle. Half its torso was crushed. Red light flickered weakly behind broken lenses. As the Raven Guard withdrew, its harrowing horn released a single pulse. Seth heard it. He turned and drove a captured power axe through the construct's head cage. The red light died. Deep beneath the ilium rifts, an improvised Auspex unit awakened. A needle moved across its display. One answering signal returned from somewhere beyond the western wastes. Then another. Then dozens. The machines had not found the refuge. They had found the region containing it. The third Iron Warriors column came east, beneath a ceiling of poisoned cloud. Sergeant Seth watched it through the cracked optics of a reconnaissance scope. Its machine spirit had failed 3 days earlier, forcing him to adjust magnification by hand. Static crawled across the image, but the procession below remained impossible to mistake. Land raiders led the formation with dozer blades lowered. Predators followed in staggered pairs, their turrets searching the ridges. Rhinos, ammunition carriers and recovery vehicles filled the road behind them. Dreadnoughts marched beside the column, every mechanical stride sinking deep into the ash. The formation extended beyond sight. Seth lowered the scope. They will pass the northern mouths before nightfall. Calvus Ran lay beside him, his armor coated in grey dust. How close? Close enough for their augurs to register the concealed doors. Then we collapse the entrances. And bury the wounded beneath them? Ran looked towards the broken ground covering the sanctuary. Nothing marked the hidden passages below. No heat rose from the stone. No Vox transmission escaped the alien chambers. Yet thousands of Raven Guards sheltered beneath their feet. Apothecaries tended warriors who had lost limbs, organs and sections of their skulls. Armorers labored over weapons assembled from incompatible parts. Recovered gene seed rested inside shielded vaults no larger than supply lockers. The Iron Warriors column did not need to find the sanctuary. It needed only to pass too near. Seth activated the buried command line. "The threat is confirmed." Corax's reply came as 2 words. "Return immediately." The Raven Guard gathered in the uppermost chamber, while the enemy's engines shook dust from the ceiling. Nearly every warrior capable of standing had been summoned. Assault cadres wore damaged jump packs that might sustain one final ignition. Heavy support legionaries carried weapons whose barrels had already exceeded safe tolerances. Scouts possessed knives, captured pistols, and only a handful of bolt shells between them. The deeper galleries remained guarded by apothecaries, armorers, and the grievously wounded. Alvarek's mound stood beside the scratched tactical map, with one hand resting upon the brace enclosing his ruined leg. His flesh had begun knitting around the armor-glass wounds, but each movement reopened the damage beneath his plate. "The column cannot be redirected," he said. "False trails have failed. The Iron Warriors are ignoring every contact beyond their assigned route." "They learned from the first 2 columns," Ran replied. "They learned caution, Corax said. "Not wisdom." The Primarch studied the enemy's path. His black eyes moved between the narrow approaches, concealed entrances, and ravines weakened by orbital impacts. "If we allow them to pass, they discover us. And if we attack," said Seth, "they will know a large force remains in the region. They know that already. They lack certainty regarding our strength and location." Maun examined the map. "We could withdraw the mobile strength and abandon the refuge. The wounded cannot be moved before the column arrives. Then we sacrifice the entrances." Corax looked at him. Maun's burned face remained expressionless. "The enemy passes within artillery range," the strike captain continued. "If they suspect anything beneath these ridges, they will flatten them. Every wounded warrior dies whether we defend the sanctuary or not." Corax rested his remaining claw upon the map. "Then we will not defend it." Ran frowned. "We will destroy the column before it reaches the doors." No one questioned the simplicity of the statement. The Raven Guard emerged from the rifts in silence. They divided through gullies and volcanic cuts, moving beneath camouflage cloaks, stiff with ash and dried blood. Recovered munitions were carried by hand because the Legion possessed too few functioning transports to risk their engines. Melter charges hung from armor webbing. Crack grenades were distributed, one per warrior wherever possible. Corax committed everything. There would be no reserve beyond the wounded waiting underground. The first attack began shortly after noon. Shaped charges opened beneath the lead Land Raider as it entered a narrow defile. The road split. The assault tank dropped nose first into the rupture, its forward hull striking hard enough to crush the driver against his restraints. Secondary explosions tore through the troop compartment. Behind it, a Predator struck a buried melter mine. White fire consumed the vehicle's tracks. Armor ran like wax. The tank slewed across the road and collided with a Rhino, sealing the passage beneath an avalanche of burning metal. Raven Guard fired from the heights. Missiles struck ammunition carriers. Plasma bolts opened command cupolas. Snipers killed exposed officers and tech marines. For several breaths, the column ceased to exist as a coherent formation. Then, the Iron Warriors answered. Their artillery did not seek individual targets. It erased terrain. Whirlwind launchers elevated behind the trapped armor and released salvos into the ridges. Warheads burst above the Raven Guard positions, showering the heights with razor fragments. Secondary detonations struck the cliff faces. Stone collapsed in sheets. One reconnaissance squad vanished beneath an entire mountainside. Another attempted to withdraw through a narrow trench before a siege shell struck the ridge above them. Thousands of tons of basalt descended into the passage. Black-armored hands remained visible between the stones, fingers twitching until the pressure flattened the warriors inside their plate. Autocannons swept the heights after the bombardment. A Raven Guard heavy support cadre tried to relocate its missile launcher. The first burst cut the weapon bearer through the torso. His upper body spun away, dragging steaming intestine across the rocks. The second burst struck the ammunition carrier. Fragmentation warheads detonated inside his armor, reducing him and 3 brothers to scorched pieces scattered across the slope. The Iron Warriors advanced through their own wreckage. Rhinos pushed burning vehicles aside. Dreadnoughts climbed over shattered hulls. Legionaries formed around the armor in disciplined blocks, bolters raised towards every possible approach. The elegant battle Corax had prepared ceased to exist. The column had suffered, but had not stopped. It continued towards the concealed entrances. Secondary positions, Maun ordered across the shadow cant. Withdraw by claws. Do not contest the lower road. Rand's voice answered through heavy fire. The lower road is already lost. Then collapse it. Our warriors remain there. They know their duty. The charges detonated. The road folded beneath 2 rhinos and an advancing dreadnought. The machine disappeared into the pit, firing as it fell. Its cannon burst struck the Raven Guard position that had triggered the collapse. The transmission ended in static. Corax watched from the central ridge as his plan dissolved into extermination. The Iron Warriors could not retreat without abandoning armor and wounded. The Raven Guard could not withdraw without exposing the sanctuary. Neither force possessed ground, it could surrender. The battle contracted into the gullies. Ranges shortened. Strategy became murder. Raven Guard descended upon isolated Iron Warriors squads in packs. They ceased waiting for signals. They stopped marking targets for supporting fire. Exhaustion and grief stripped away the discipline Corax had rebuilt within the rifts. A disabled rhino became the center of a frenzy. Its tracks had been destroyed, but the crew remained alive behind sealed hatches. Raven Guard climbed across the hull and hacked at the doors with chain blades. When the first opening appeared, half a dozen warriors forced their hands inside and tore the metal wider. The Iron Warriors within fired through the breach. One Raven Guard lost his head. Another took a bolt shell through the abdomen. The round burst inside him, spraying his brothers with liver, spinal fragments, and shredded intestine. They did not fall back. They ripped the hatch from its mount and entered together. The killing continued long after the crew had died. Chain blades passed again and again through ruined bodies. Iron Warriors were reduced to red paste, spread across the benches and walls. One Raven Guard tore a dead gunner's arm from the shoulder and used it to batter another corpse until the gauntlet broke open. At a second vehicle, legionaries dragged an Iron Warrior's driver from the hatch. His legs had been crushed beneath the control assembly. Severed flesh trailed behind him as they pulled him free. He tried to reach for a pistol. A Raven Guard warrior stamped upon his hand. Another drove a combat blade through the driver's mouth. They continued striking after the blade entered the ground beneath his skull. Corax saw them. For a moment, the battlefield vanished. He remembered the old 19th. He remembered Terran warriors from before Deliverance, before Lycaeus, before he had reshaped the Legion around liberation and precision. They had carried the Emperor's judgment into rebellious cities with blackened hands. They had broken populations not merely to achieve compliance, but because terror had become its own reward. They called it necessity. They called it strength. They left mutilated bodies where the living would find them, not because the corpses served a plan, but because cruelty was easier than restraint. Corax had removed their commanders. He had scattered their traditions. He had taught the Legion that fear was a tool, not a hunger. Now Istvan was calling the old blood back. His sons were not killing to end resistance. They were mutilating the dead because hatred required no orders. They were becoming creatures shaped by the massacre, inheritors of the same mindless brutality that had turned Angron from a rebel into a tyrant. Corax did not rebuke them. No speech could be heard above the guns. No command would purge what exhaustion had awakened. He stepped from the ridge. His descent carried him into the center of the Iron Warriors' formation. He struck between two rhinos. The ground cracked beneath his boots. Before the nearest legionary could turn, Corax's lightning claw passed through his breastplate and emerged between his shoulders. The Primarch continued the stroke through the warrior beside him. Both bodies opened in the same arc. Blood became vapor across the energized talons. Corax moved. The Iron Warriors fired at the darkness he left behind. He crossed through them faster than targeting runes could stabilize. His passage was marked by successive eruptions of blood. A head burst from its shoulders. A torso separated at the waist. 3 warriors fell in sections before their brothers understood he had entered their line. He did not roar. He did not challenge. His silence made the violence deliberate. A rhino turned towards him, its pintle weapon firing. Corax caught the front armor with both hands. The vehicle's tracks churned against the earth. He lifted. The rhino rolled onto its side. Legionaries inside struck the walls hard enough to fracture bone. Corax heaved again and overturned the transport completely, crushing an Iron Warriors squad beneath its roof. Their screams ended inside collapsing ceramite. A predator fired from less than 30 meters. Corax moved before the shell left the barrel. The round struck the overturned rhino and tore it apart. Metal, flesh, and burning fuel spread across the road. The Primarch reached the Predator. His claw entered the engine housing. He tore out the reactor shielding, cabling, and burning core assembly in a single mass. Fire spread over his armor. He turned and hurled the engine into an Iron Warrior's heavy weapons squad. The burning machinery struck with the force of a seed shell. 2 warriors vanished beneath it. Another was pinned against the cliff, his lower body crushed into the stone. Promethium poured over the survivors. Their ammunition detonated one weapon at a time, hammering armor and flesh apart from within. Corax climbed the Predator as it burned. The commander emerged from the cupola with a power axe. Corax caught the descending weapon against his dead vambrace. The disruption field split the ruined armor to the elbow. His remaining claw entered beneath the commander's chin and continued through the skull. The talons opened the helmet from within. Fragments of brain and bone struck the turret. Corax cast the body aside and saw the Land Raider approaching. Its assault ramp had been damaged by the first sabotage. The door hung partly open while legionaries fired through the breach. Lascanon beams cut into the ridges. Heavy bolters tore Raven Guard from the heights. Corax ran directly towards it. The Land Raider fired. One Lascanon beam passed close enough to char his pauldron. Another struck the road and transformed stone into molten spray. Corax reached the ramp. He drove his claw beneath its edge and tore it down. Iron Warriors waited inside. Bolters fired in unison. Mass reactive shells struck Corax's breastplate and abdomen. One penetrated beneath his ribs. Another detonated in the muscle of his shoulder. Blood filled the interior of his armor. He entered the vehicle. The Land Raider continued forwards. Its hull shook. Fists struck from within. Weapons discharged at point-blank range. The engine note rose as the driver attempted to crush the Primarch against the interior bulkhead. A body struck the armor-glass vision slit from inside. It remained there, face flattened, eyes burst from their sockets. Then a severed arm flew through the open ramp. The Land Raider swerved. Its turret fired into the cliff without command. Corax emerged through the roof. He came upwards inside a storm of torn armor, blood and pulverized organs. The turret lifted from its ring and fell behind the vehicle. The Primarch stood within the opening as the tank ground to a halt beneath him. Nothing living remained inside. The troop compartment had become a butcher's vat. Bodies were pressed into corners, split open by claw strikes and point-blank detonations. Sections of torso adhered to the walls. Intestines hung from the ceiling cabling. No corpse retained enough of its form to identify rank or name. The Raven Guard saw him. Their frenzy faltered. Corax did not mutilate the dead. He did not strike after resistance ended. Every movement destroyed a threat. Every death altered the battle. His violence possessed purpose. That distinction shamed them more completely than any rebuke. Sergeant Seth pulled his blade from an Iron Warrior corpse and looked at the gore coating his hands. "Reform," he said. The warrior beside him continued hacking at a body. Seth seized his shoulder. "Reform." Across the gullies, commands returned. Claws reassembled. Fire lanes were restored. Wounded were dragged behind cover. Heavy weapons shifted to interlocking positions. Raven Guard ceased descending upon isolated enemies and began closing the column according to plan. Maun heard the change upon the command lines. "The Legion remembers itself," he said. Corax stepped down from the ruined Land Raider. "Then finish it." Every withdrawal route was sealed. Raven Guard collapsed the eastern road behind the remaining armor. Scouts occupied the northern gullies. Assault cadres cut through the western flank and destroyed the last recovery vehicles. The Iron Warriors contracted towards a crater filled with burning wreckage. Fewer than 200 remained. Their commander transmitted once across an open frequency. "This ground has cost you more than it is worth," Corax answered. "You mistake cost for value. We will accept withdrawal under truce." "No." "Surrender then." "No." The Iron Warrior was silent.
Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Support really helps.
Corax looked upon the ring of his sons surrounding the crater. No one leaves. The final bombardment began. Captured missiles descended into the crater. Plasma struck disabled tanks and ignited their reactors. Iron warriors fired until barrels glowed and ammunition failed. Then the Raven Guard entered. They killed the survivors between wrecked vehicles and piles of corpses. No surrender was requested. None was accepted. The last Iron Warrior died beneath the broken tracks of a predator, firing a bolt pistol until Seth removed his hand and drove a blade through his throat. The traitor force ceased to exist. Scattered garrisons still occupied the Urgal Hills. Search bands remained across the wastes, yet no Iron Warriors formation capable of aggressive operations survived in the region. The rain began as the apothecaries entered the crater. It fell black and thick. Chemical clouds released ash, industrial toxins and vapor drawn from burning corpses. Rain struck armor with an oily hiss. It ran red from every seam and collected in shell holes as dark fluid filmed with human fat. Apothecaries opened the dead beneath the downpour. They cut gene seed from Raven Guard bodies before acid reached the exposed tissue. Rain ate at skin where helmets had been removed. Faces softened. Eyes collapsed. Wounds widened as blood and flesh dissolved together. A corpse resting against the crater wall slowly folded in half when the spine beneath its ruined armor became pulp. The Raven Guard stripped ammunition and reactor cells while the battlefield decomposed around them. Corax returned to the sanctuary without speaking. He remained there for less than an hour. Maun saw him cross the upper chamber, wearing armor still covered in black rain and Iron Warrior's blood. "Where are you going?" the strike captain asked. Corax did not answer. Seth moved to follow. Maun caught his arm. "No. Our Lord goes alone. He often does. The blind hunters remain beyond the eastern ridge." Maun watched Corax enter the passage leading to the surface. "There are times when the Raven Lord becomes most dangerous because no one is watching." Corax emerged into the storm. Black rain ran across his pale face. He carried no bolter. His ruined left claw had been removed, leaving the scarred vambrace bare. The surviving talons rested at his side. He turned towards the west, towards the Urgal Depression, towards the corpse fields where his legion had died. Lightning moved through the poisoned clouds as Corax walked into the rain. Within moments, the darkness swallowed him. Corax crossed the wastes without leaving a trail. Black rain fell upon his bare head and streamed across his face. It carried ash from the burning fleet, toxins from ruptured manufactoria, and blood drawn into the atmosphere by the heat of the massacre. The rain gathered upon his armor in oily sheets, filling the rents in the black ceramite before running red from his boots. He walked alone. World Eater's patrols passed within meters of him. They came through the storm, with chain axes growling and weapons striking sparks from the stones. Their armor had once been white and blue. Istvan had repainted them. Blood filled the recesses around their legion markings. Strips of flayed skin hung from belts and pauldrons. Severed Raven Guard hands had been chained to one warrior's breastplate, their fingers knocking against the ceramite with every stride. Corax stood beside the path as they passed. Rain struck him. Lightning illuminated him. The red lenses of their helmets turned across the ground where he waited. They did not see him. The gift was not invisibility. Light did not bend around his body. His armor did not mimic the landscape. The eye perceived him, but the mind refused to recognize what the eye had seen. He became a detail dismissed before thought could give it meaning, an absence shaped like a warrior. One World Eater stopped. His helmet turned towards Corax. The legionary's breathing rasped across an open vox channel. The butcher's nails twitched beneath the armor of his skull, feeding suspicion into a brain already drowning in pain. "What is it?" another warrior demanded. The first World Eater stared directly into Corax's black eyes. "Nothing." He turned away. The patrol continued east. Corax waited until the last chain axe faded beneath the rain before moving again. Mechanicum engines stalked the lower plains. Blind hunters crossed the open ground upon jointed limbs, their harrowing horns sending pulses through the stone. Red beams passed over the Raven Lord's body and lingered upon the heat caught within his armor. Machines possessed no minds to deceive. Corax crouched beneath the torn hull of an Imperial Army transport as the nearest construct moved past. Its horn vibrated inside his bones. Barbed manipulators unfolded beneath its torso. One red beam traced the edge of his ruined pauldron. He remained still. The construct turned towards a stronger heat source. A World-Eater corpse lay half-buried beneath the mud, its armor reactor damaged but functional. The blind hunter impaled the body with a hooked limb, lifted it from the earth, and tore open the breastplate. The dead legionary's chest came apart with the armor. Cooked organs spilled into the rain. The machine examined the reactor, discarded the corpse, and continued towards the eastern ridges. Corax emerged after it had gone. The Urgal depression lay beyond the next rise. He reached it before nightfall. The killing ground had become a country of corpses. Bodies covered the basin so completely that the original Earth was visible only inside shell craters and beneath the tracks of armored vehicles. Loyalists and traitors lay entangled where they had killed one another. Some corpses remained sealed within their armor. Others had been opened for gene seed, trophies, or amusement. The dead of the Iron Hands had been decapitated in imitation of their Primarch. The salamanders had been burned after death, their blackened bodies arranged around the wreckage of their tanks. Raven Guard lay spread across the western slopes, their armor stripped of ammunition and working systems. World Eaters had built cairns from skulls. The structures rose higher than a legionary. Mortal skulls formed the lower courses. Legionese Astartes skulls occupied the upper tiers, larger and thicker, many still carrying service studs or fragments of fused interface cabling. Blood had been used as mortar. Black rain ran through the empty eye sockets and down the cairns in winding red streams. Word-bearer altars stood between them. Symbols had been carved into the exposed flesh of the dead. Bodies were sewn together in circles around iron lecterns. One arrangement consisted of more than 100 corpses, each opened from sternum to pelvis and linked to the next by lengths of intestine. The organs had begun to rot. Gas swelled the bodies beneath the rain. Bellies split without warning, releasing grey fluid and insects into the mud. Corax walked among his sons. He knew some only by armor markings or the fragments of names remaining upon their breastplates. Others he recognized. A warrior lay beneath the severed leg of a warhound titan. His helmet was gone. Half his face had been burned away, yet the remaining eye stared towards the poisoned sky. Corax knelt beside him. "Saran Kask," he said. Before the Legion, Kask had been prisoner 1241 in the lower mines of Lycaeus. He had killed an overseer with a length of broken chain and hidden the body inside an ore crusher. Corax had found him during the first months of the uprising and given him a weapon. Kask had laughed when told he would become one of the Emperor's angels. There was no laughter left in his face. Corax closed the remaining eye. He found another son impaled upon the barrel of a shattered artillery piece. The warrior's abdomen had ruptured around the metal. His legs had been removed. Crows or some carrion creature native to Istvan had eaten the softer flesh around his throat. The broken insignia upon his shoulder belonged to the company that had guarded the gates of Kiavar during the final surrender. Corax removed it. The ceramite plate came free with skin attached to its underside. He cleaned the flesh away with his thumb and secured the insignia to his belt. A scavenger moved among the bodies nearby. It was low and pale, with 6 limbs and a mouth arranged in a circular ring of teeth. The creature climbed onto the chest of a dead Raven Guard and pushed its head into the wound where the warrior's face had been. Corax reached it before it could feed. He caught the creature behind the skull. It twisted, limbs striking against his forearm. its mouth opened wide enough to encircle his wrist. Corax closed his hand. The scavenger's head burst. Bone fragments and yellow fluid spread across his palm. He dropped the twitching carcass beside the body and wiped his hand upon the rain-soaked earth. The act accomplished nothing. The dead warrior could not know his remains had been defended. Corax did it anyway. He continued deeper into the depression. The enemy had established camps among the wreckage. The largest belonged to the World Eaters. Their armor and vehicles formed an irregular perimeter around burning pits and fighting cages. No walls had been erected. No commander among Angron's sons believed fortifications necessary, while their Primarch remained present. Corax entered unseen. The camp stank of blood, promethium, and opened bodies. Fires burned inside the hulls of destroyed Loyalist tanks. World Eaters sat around them sharpening chain teeth, repairing weapons, or tearing flesh from charred corpses. Their discipline was decomposing. Warriors fought over trophies. One killed another for possession of a salamander's helm, driving a knife repeatedly into the throat seal until the victim drowned inside his armor. Those nearby watched without interference. When the struggle ended, they laughed as the victor pulled the helmet free, and most of the dead warrior's face came with it. Apothecaries worked beneath a shelter made from the wings of a crashed gunship. A World Eater lay chained to a metal slab. The rear of his skull had been opened. Damaged implants protruded through torn flesh, wires glistening with blood and cerebrospinal fluid. His butcher's nails had failed during the massacre. The apothecaries replaced them without anesthetic. A drill entered the exposed bone. The warrior's body arched against the restraints. Muscles tore beneath his armor plugs. One of the chirurgeons forced a new length of metal into the brain, while another hammered the implant deeper with a mallet. The legionary screamed. The nails caught. His scream changed into laughter. The apothecaries released the chains. He rose from the slab, blood pouring from the opened skull, and attacked the nearest warrior before his armor could be returned. No one attempted to stop him until he tore out the apothecary's throat. Beyond the surgery pits, captured Loyalists fought for the entertainment of their enemies. Corax saw two iron hands inside a cage made from tank tracks. Both had been stripped of armor. One lacked an arm. The other had lost both eyes and fought by listening to the movement of his opponent. World Eaters threw knives between the bars and shouted for them to kill. The blind warrior refused to raise the weapon. A chain axe entered the cage from above and split him from shoulder to groin. Blood and organs struck the surviving iron hand, painting his silvered flesh red. He charged the bars with the knife in his remaining hand. World Eaters seized his arm through the gaps. They pulled until the limb tore from its socket. The prisoner remained standing for several seconds, staring at the empty wound. Then the bars opened, and the World Eaters entered together. Corax watched until the iron hand disappeared beneath them. He could have killed those nearest. He could have freed the remaining prisoners. The camp contained thousands of World Eaters. An open attack would summon Angron and condemn the surviving Raven Guard in the rifts. Compassion without purpose would become another form of vanity. Corax turned away. The crowd parted. Angron walked through the camp. The Red Angel carried both chain axes. Gore filled their teeth and dripped from the casings. His armor was scarred by bolter fire, flame, and blades. The cables of the butcher's nails hung behind his head like the legs of a metallic parasite. His sons approached him with trophies. One presented the severed head of a Raven Guard captain. Angron glanced at it. Not him. The warrior lowered the trophy. No, father. Then why do you bring it? To honor you. Angron struck him. The backhand blow broke the World Eater's neck and tore half the helmet away. The legionary landed among the crowd with his head twisted towards his spine. Another warrior laughed. Angron buried an axe in his chest. The weapon's chain tore through the breastplate, ribs, and both hearts. It continued cutting after the body fell, reducing the torso to strips of meat caught within ruined armor. No one laughed again. Corax watched his brother from less than 30 meters away. Both had been raised in chains. Both had learned rebellion before they learned brotherhood. Corax had broken the masters of Lycaeus and seized the weapons used to oppress him. Angron had risen against the High Riders of Nuceria and led slaves into a war they could not win. Yet Angron now stood surrounded by sons who feared him more than any slave had feared an overseer. He had become the hand holding the lash. The nails explained his pain. They did not absolve his choices. Corax flexed his remaining lightning claw. The talons came alive with a muted growl. He could cross the distance before the World Eaters understood he was present. He could strike Angron from behind, drive energized blades through the cables at the base of his skull, and tear away whatever remained of the brain beneath them. Perhaps Angron would die. Perhaps Corax would. The camp would descend upon them. Thousands of World Eaters would scour the rifts until every surviving son of the 19th Legion had been torn apart. And Angron would receive what he wanted. A contest. A death given meaning by combat. Corax deactivated his claw. He would deny him. The decision felt colder than murder. Corax left the center of the camp and moved towards the outer patrol lines. 20 World Eaters occupied the northern approach. They stood around a low fire, arguing over which squad would claim Corax's skull when the Raven Lord was finally dragged from hiding. The first died without seeing him. Corax closed one hand around the warrior's throat and crushed the gorget into his spine. The World Eater convulsed once. Corax lowered the body without a sound. He moved behind the second and drove 2 talons beneath the rear armor. They passed through both hearts before emerging from the breastplate. Corax caught the corpse as it sagged. The others began to notice the silence. One turned. Corax seized his helmet and rotated it completely around. Vertebrae broke in a wet succession. The body remained upright for a moment before dropping to its knees. A chain axe started. Corax crossed the fire. His claw removed the wielder's arms and head in one stroke. Blood burst across the flames, filling the air with the smell of cooked meat. The patrol died in moments. Throats collapsed beneath his hands. Spines separated. Talons entered through visor lenses and emerged from the backs of skulls with steaming brain matter caught between them. One warrior remained. Corax broke both of his legs and dragged him towards the command pavilion. The World Eater clawed at the earth. "Coward!" he gasped. "Show yourself to Angron." Corax leaned close. "I have." Recognition entered the warrior's eyes. Corax left him alive. He arranged the dead in a line, each body seated upright and facing Angron's pavilion. Their severed heads rested in their laps. The survivor lay at the center, unable to stand and unable to look away. "Tell him I was here," Corax said. He disappeared into the rain. Corax returned to the Ilium rifts during the 42nd day. His armor was coated in ash, black rain, and World Eater's blood. The broken insignia of a dead Raven Guard remained at his belt. His officers gathered in the upper chamber. Maun examined him. "Where did you go?" Corax walked past. No answer came. Seth looked towards the blood drying upon the lightning claw. "What did you find?" "The war will not end soon." Corax faced the assembled warriors. "Prepare the refuge for extended operations. Increase the distance between surface caches. Divide every ammunition reserve. No route will be used twice in succession." Rand stepped forward. "Do we still intend only to survive?" Corax looked upon the remnants of his legion. "While one Raven Guard lives, the traitors will never possess certainty. They will never rest without wondering what waits behind them." His voice remained quiet. "We will make justice indistinguishable from fear." Far from Istvan, Marcus Valerius covered the strategium of deliverance with stars. Charts lay across the command table. Astropathic records, fleet departure times, and warp current projections had been marked in different inks. The work represented days without sleep. Commander Branna Nev stood opposite him in black warplate. "You have converted nightmares into navigation," Branna said. I have compared them to known positions. You saw symbols. I saw the Carinae shoals before learning their configuration. I saw the ruins of the Cathur system on the night our astropaths received confirmation that the fleet had passed them. And now, Istvan. Branner looked at the route marked across the table. You ask me to abandon deliverance because you dreamed of a burning bird. I ask you to investigate the possibility that your Primarch lives. My orders came from Corax himself. Hold deliverance. Preserve the Legion's reserve. Preserve it for whom? The chamber became still. Raven Guard officers stood along the walls. Therian cohort commanders waited behind Valerius. No one moved. Branner's eyes hardened. Choose your next words carefully, Prefector. Valerius placed both hands upon the table. If Corax is dead, our departure changes nothing. If he lives, guarding an empty fortress while he is hunted, preserves the wording of his order and betrays its purpose. You speak of betrayal to me? I speak of judgment. Branner drew his bolt pistol. The weapon came level with Valerius's face. Several Therian officers reached towards their sidearms. Raven Guard hands closed around weapons in answer. Valerius did not move. Corax liberated Lycaeus because he refused obedience without judgment, he said. Blind obedience is the habit of a slave. The muzzle touched his forehead. Branner's finger rested upon the trigger. Valerius could see the scratches around the pistol's barrel. He could smell the oil within the weapon. He knew a mass-reactive shell would remove his head before his guards cleared their holsters. He did not withdraw the words. Something changed in Branner's expression. Not belief, recognition. Corax had demanded the same defiance from those who followed him. He had broken the prison moon because men had chosen purpose above command. Branner lowered the pistol. You will never call me a slave again. No, Commander. And I do not believe your dreams. I know. Branner holstered the weapon and looked down at the charts. But uncertainty has become intolerable. He turned towards his officers. Prepare the fleet. Restricted signals. No astropathic declaration. The Deliverance garrison embarks within the day. One captain glanced towards the black world beyond the armor glass. We are abandoning the homeworld. We are obeying the purpose of our orders. Branner looked to Valerius. The Therian cohort will provision for sustained void operations. You will place every chart and account of these dreams aboard my command vessel. Valerius bowed. Destination? Branner stared at the final mark upon the chart. Istvan. Across Deliverance, sealed armories opened. Legionaries entered transport galleries beneath strict silence. Mortal soldiers loaded ammunition, fuel and medici supplies into waiting ships. Reactors awakened one by one, their vibrations passing through the moon that Corax had once freed. The last reserve of the Raven Guard prepared to abandon its fortress, not because its commander believed in prophecy, because somewhere beyond the dark, the Legion's father might still be alive. Alexis heard the gods speaking through the weather. Black rain hissed upon his crimson armor. Blood fog moved between the northern ravines in slow, breathing coils. Lightning crawled sideways through the poisoned clouds, illuminating the carved scriptures upon his warplate, and the human skin stretched across his crozius. Behind him, the word-bearers advanced beneath burning icons. Their hymns rolled through the Ilium rifts. The narrow channels caught every voice and returned it distorted, until a few hundred warriors sounded like a congregation without end. Censers swung from chains beneath their standards. The smoke within them came from rendered human fat, pulverized bone and incense taken from the chapels of murdered iterators. The fragrance was sweet. It clung to the tongue. War leader Alexis raised one gauntlet, and the chanting ceased. A black armored corpse had been nailed to the wall ahead. The Raven Guard warrior was still alive. Iron spikes passed through both shoulders, thighs and abdomen, pinning him upright against the stone. His helmet had been removed. One eye was gone. The other remained fixed upon Alexis, with the cold hatred of a man who had exhausted pain and discovered something beyond it. A word. Bearer's acolyte stood beneath the prisoner with a hooked blade. "We found him alone, war leader." "No one is alone here," Alexis said. He approached the captive. "What strength remains beneath these mountains?" The Raven Guard spat blood upon his breastplate. Alexis smiled. "You conceal fear well. I conceal nothing. Then you will make an honest offering." The acolyte opened the prisoner from sternum to pelvis. The blade passed through armor seals and flesh in one slow stroke. Blood poured over the warrior's groin and down the stone. His fused ribs resisted the hooks at first. 3 word-bearers pulled upon the chains until bone cracked and the chest opened. The Raven Guard did not scream. A bound psyker was dragged forwards. He had once belonged to the mortal auxiliaries of the Iron Hands. His arms had been removed. Brass nails had been driven through his skull, each connected by wire to a collar engraved with Colchizian script. His mouth had been sewn shut, yet whispers leaked through the flesh around the stitches. The psyker knelt beneath the opened warrior. His blind eyes rolled beneath translucent lids. Alexis placed one hand upon the captive's skull. "Show me where his pain points." The psyker convulsed. Blood ran from his nose and ears. The whispers grew louder. They came not from his mouth, but from the air surrounding him, a chorus of broken voices repeating words no mortal throat could shape. His head turned east, towards the deeper rifts. Alexis had encountered 6 Raven Guard bands during the previous days. Each had been small. Each had fled before decisive engagement. His captains believed them isolated remnants. Alexis did not. The scattered warriors moved with common purpose. Their ammunition was divided too evenly. Their routes intersected without apparent communication. Every band surrendered ground in a manner that drew the word-bearers farther from the World Eater's patrol zones. There was a larger prey hidden beneath the mountains. Perhaps hundreds, perhaps thousands. Alexis had not informed Angron. The Red Angel would descend upon the rifts with his entire legion, drowning subtlety beneath chain axes and artillery. The kill would belong to the World Eaters. Horus would hear that Angron had ended Corax's resistance, while the sons of Lorgar gathered corpses behind him. No, Alexis would bring the Raven Lord's head to his Primarch. He would prove that revelation, not rage, had completed the massacre. "Send no signal beyond the ravines," he ordered. "The gods have placed this offering before us. It is not to be shared." His captains bowed. The Raven Guard prisoner finally screamed when the psyker pushed deeper into his mind. Alexis listened to the sound and mistook defiance for discovery. Far beneath them, the scream reached the alien refuge, not through Vox, through dreams. Warriors sleeping within the black chambers awoke together. Some rose with knives drawn, others tore at their armor seals, convinced hooks were spreading their ribs. One legionary crushed the throat of the brother beside him before consciousness returned. The unknown material surrounding the sanctuary resisted the psychic intrusion, but it did not erase it. The pressure gathered at the thresholds. Nightmares seeped through every natural passage and settled upon the exhausted like poison gas. Apothecaries moved among the waking warriors, administering stimulants too precious for sleep. Corax required none. He stood in the upper chamber, while scouts marked the word-bearers' advance upon the scratched tactical plates. "They are dividing," Sergeant Seth said. "Not yet," Corax replied. Seth looked up. "They have entered 4 ravines. They remain within supporting distance." Maun leaned against his brace beside the map. "Their commander is eager. Eagerness is not the same as stupidity. On Istvan, the distinction has narrowed." Corax studied the routes. The word-bearers were advancing carefully despite their rituals. Forward squads marked passages with blood and burning scripture. Reserve elements occupied the ridges. Their officers maintained Vox contact through relay stations, protected by heavy weapons. They had learned enough to be dangerous. Corax placed one claw upon the western channel. Give him a victory. Seth understood. How convincing? He must believe discipline is failing. Raven Guard emerged from concealment before dusk. A reconnaissance claw allowed itself to be seen crossing an exposed ridge. Word bearers opened fire. One Raven Guard fell with a bolt shell through his spine. The others returned an undisciplined volley and fled, leaving ammunition and blood behind. A second band abandoned a cache after only token resistance. A third retreated too quickly and allowed the enemy to recover a damaged command slate. Its data contained fragments of false deployment markings, casualty tallies, and references to a central gathering point. Alexis read the slate beneath the light of a burning icon. "They are breaking," one captain said. "They are being revealed," Alexis corrected. Yet pride warmed his voice. He ordered his force divided across 7 ravines. Fast attack squads pushed ahead to close the eastern passages. Heavy support elements occupied the northern heights. Chaplains led line companies through the center, while reserve formations advanced along parallel channels. Each route had been chosen by Corax. Each ravine curved between ridges that killed Vox transmission. Each contained constrictions where no formation could turn. Each was separated from the next by stone too steep for rapid reinforcement. The Raven Guard withdrew badly until the word-bearers could no longer see one another. Then the fog swallowed them. Alexis felt the silence first. The hymns ceased from one ravine, then another. He activated the command net. "Third company report," Static answered. "Fifth company." A burst of gunfire sounded through the channel, followed by a wet choking noise. Alexis raised his Crozius. "Close formation. Prepare for contact." The ambush began everywhere at once. Raven Guard emerged from the fog at distances too short for disciplined volleys. Each warrior fired once. Officers died first. Bolt shells entered helm lenses, command gorgets, and exposed throats. Vox operators lost heads and arms before warnings could be transmitted. Then, the black-armored survivors entered close combat. A word-bearer's chaplain raised his Crozius and began an invocation. Sergeant Seth caught the weapon below its head, twisted it from the priest's hands, and drove the iron staff through the gap beneath his breastplate. The Crozius emerged from the chaplain's back, carrying sections of both hearts upon its haft. Seth lifted him from the ground. The word-bearer kicked weakly as his own weapon pinned him against the ravine wall. Around them, combat blades entered joints and seals. Raven Guard hands hooked beneath helmets and pulled until flesh separated from skull. One word-bearer lost his face with his helm, revealing teeth and red muscle beneath. He continued fighting until a black gauntlet crushed the exposed bone into his brain. In the western passage, word-bearers attempted to form a firing line. The ravine was too narrow. The front rank fired. The rear ranks pressed forwards. Raven Guard detonated charges behind them, driving the formation into itself. Warriors were trapped chest to back, unable to raise bolters or turn. Corax entered from above. His lightning claw passed through 3 helmets in one sweep. Heads opened. Grey matter and broken teeth sprayed the stone. He seized another warrior by the power pack and threw him lengthwise through the packed formation. Armor struck armor. Legionaries fell without space to reach the ground. The Raven Guard descended upon the obstruction with blades. Elsewhere, Maun controlled the battle from a hidden relay point. Shielded signal cables ran from the refuge through the rock, allowing him to hear fragments of the word-bearer's command net. "They are attempting to reach the World Eaters," a signals officer said. "Source? Central Ravine. High-strength transmitter." "Alexis," Maun said. He keyed the interference array. Every captured Vox unit in the northern rifts transmitted at once. False World Eaters challenges, Mechanicum pulses, Iron Warriors command bursts, and the screams of dying word-bearers flooded the frequency. Alexis struck his transmitter. "Repeat. This is War Leader Alexis. Substantial Raven Guard strength confirmed. Request immediate." The signal drowned beneath static. He turned upon his communications officer. "Restore it. The channels are saturated. Then climb the ridge. The enemy controls the heights." Alexis killed him with the Crozius. The weapon crushed the officer's helmet into his shoulders. Blood and fragments of skull burst from the gorget. The body remained upright for a moment, before folding beneath the weight of ruined armor. Alexis seized the transmitter himself. A shadow fell across him. Corax stood within the ravine. The word-bearers around Alexis raised their weapons. The Primarch moved. His claw opened the nearest warrior from hip to shoulder. The return stroke removed both arms from another. Alexis swung the Crozius and struck only darkness. Corax appeared inside the weapon's arc. Alexis opened his mouth to speak. The talons entered through it. They passed through tongue, palate, and brain before bursting from the rear of the helmet. Corax spread his fingers. The skull split apart. One talon hooked the vox grill and tore it through the back of the head in a spray of blood, bone, and shredded cabling. Alexis died without completing his warning. The remaining word-bearers fought until surrounded. Several triggered armor charges rather than submit. One explosion tore 2 Raven Guard apart and scattered pieces of the captor across the ravine. Others bit through poison capsules hidden inside their teeth. They died foaming blood into their helmets while whispering blessings to powers that did not answer. One survived. His name was Argel Torven, a line captain whose legs had been crushed beneath a collapsed icon. Apothecaries removed the poison tooth before he could break it. His armor's reactor was disabled, his hands bound behind him with fiber cable, and his jaw locked open by a metal brace. Corax had him carried beyond the rifts. The interrogation took place inside an ancient impact crater beneath unnatural lightning. The storm above moved against the wind. Violet fire crossed the clouds without thunder. Black rain fell around the crater, but did not enter its center. Torven knelt in the ash. Corax stood before him. The Primarch allowed the shadow surrounding him to fall away. Torven's body stiffened. The full presence of Corvus Corax entered the crater. He seemed larger than armor, and flesh permitted, a shape cut from the absence between stars. His eyes were pits without reflection. His silence carried the pressure of execution already decided. The word-bearer tried to pray. Corax crushed his right knee beneath one boot. The joint collapsed. Armor folded inward. Bone burst through the rear seal in white fragments. Torven screamed against the brace. Apothecary Carven injected stimulants into his neck. "Traitor strength remaining on Istvan," Corax said. Torven laughed through blood. Corax removed his left knee. The scream became a high mechanical shriek through the open vox. "Commanders! The gods command us!" Corax peeled the breastplate from him. He did not cut the seals. He placed one claw beneath the armor and tore until bolts, cables, and skin came away together. Torven's chest lay exposed, muscle and fused ribs glistening beneath the lightning. Deployment zones. You cannot escape revelation. Corax drove one talon between the ribs. It entered the secondary heart. Torven convulsed as the energized blade cooked tissue around the wound. Blood filled the cavity and ran over his abdomen. "Faith," Corax said, "has not made your anatomy mysterious." Carven sealed the damaged organ enough to prolong life. Question by question, the prisoner broke. The other traitor Primarchs had departed or withdrawn their principal strength. Limited formations remained to garrison the killing ground and hunt survivors. Angron had stayed. The World Eaters remained on Istvan in full strength. They knew Corax lived. Mechanicum constructs had narrowed the search region. World Eaters companies were gathering beyond the eastern ridges. Artillery, armor, and blind hunters were being concentrated for a general scouring of the Ilium rifts. The refuge had days, perhaps less. Torven laughed when the Raven Guard officers heard the intelligence. "You are buried already." Calvus Ran stared towards Corax. "Then we fortify the entrances." Others voiced agreement. The chambers could be mined. The passages would force the World Eaters into narrow fronts. Every meter could be purchased with traitor dead. "A final stand," Seth said. Corax looked upon them. "No." Rand's hands closed into fists. "We cannot outrun a legion. Then we will not move as one formation. The wounded cannot survive another withdrawal. They will move. And when movement becomes impossible, I will decide." Rand stepped closer. "We are tired of running. Your exhaustion does not grant you ownership of your death." The words silenced the chamber. "You belong to the Legion's purpose," Corax said. "If you die, it will be where your death purchases more than relief from weariness. Horus wants certainty. Angron wants an ending. You will give them neither." He turned towards the prisoner. Torvin had heard everything. Understanding entered the word-bearer's face. His confession had not doomed the Raven Guard. It had saved them. Corax drove his claw through the exposed chest and tore out both hearts together. The evacuation began before the body cooled. Stores were divided and carried through secondary tunnels. Wounded warriors were strapped to armor panels and dragged where stretchers could not pass. Gene seed vaults moved under apothecary guard. Command systems were dismantled, their components distributed among separate claws. Nothing useful remained behind. False caches were packed with unstable ammunition. Dead reactors were set to awaken after the Legion's departure. Charges lined the upper passages, and the mouths most likely to be discovered. The last rearguard withdrew during the 55th day. From a concealed ridge, Corax watched the blind hunters approach. Their harrowing horns rolled through the stone. Red beams swept the ravines. Behind them came thousands of World Eaters beneath banners, stiff with dried blood. Artillery opened fire. The northern entrances vanished beneath explosions. Hills split. Rock collapsed into the chambers. Incendiary shells followed, filling the rifts with burning promethium. Kilometers of land disappeared beneath smoke and flame. World Eaters charged into the empty refuge. Their howls became rage when they found abandoned stores. Cold blood and passages already collapsed. Angron's fury rolled across the Vox until even distant Raven Guard heard it. Corax stood in the ash while the sanctuary burned behind him. Then he turned east. The Legion divided into shadows and disappeared before the World Eaters could climb from the ruins. The Raven Guard no longer slept beneath stone. They slept beneath ash, beneath wreckage, beneath the cooling bodies of enemies whose armor still confused the blind hunters. They slept for minutes while standing in narrow clefts, helmets resting against black rock. They slept inside the abandoned engines of tanks, surrounded by the stink of fuel and cooked crewmen. More often, they did not sleep at all. The destruction of the sanctuary changed the nature of the war. There were no sealed chambers in which apothecaries could open damaged armor without fear of bombardment. No hidden vaults for gene seed. No central armory where weapons could be disassembled and rebuilt beneath steady light. Every supply cache was temporary. Every treatment station existed only until the enemy found the blood leading towards it. Every cave might already contain hunters. Every ravine was a grave awaiting occupants. Corax divided the Legion into mobile columns. Each followed a separate path through the eastern wastes, sometimes traveling days without contact. They communicated through buried markers, coded scratches upon stone, and fragments of shadow cant transmitted only during the violence of orbital storms. No column knew the entire disposition of the Legion. Capture could not betray what no warrior possessed. They reunited only to kill. An isolated World Eaters company would enter a valley and discover Raven Guard descending from 3 directions. A Sons of Horus hunting cadre would follow a trail towards what appeared to be a wounded squad, only to find the walls above crowded with silent black figures. Mechanicum relay stations ceased transmitting after midnight and were found at dawn with their attendants dismembered and their data cores removed. Then, the Raven Guard separated again. The Legion had become a procession of armored vagabonds. Little remained of uniformity.
Black ceramite survived only in patches beneath components taken from the dead. Iron-grey greaves, crimson vambraces, and sea-green shoulder plates appeared throughout the columns. Armor from older patterns was riveted across newer. Suits with bonding studs hammered into place by hand. Cabling hung exposed. Reactor vents had been repaired with pieces cut from wrecked vehicles. Heraldry was burned away. Company markings had allowed traitor observers to identify survivor bands and estimate their strength. Corax ordered every insignia obscured except the pale raven borne by those still able to display it. Many warriors removed even that. Their weapons had become equally mongrel. Bolters fired whatever compatible shells could be recovered. Some magazines contained standard mass-reactive rounds mixed with penetrators, incendiaries, and ammunition taken from traitor stores. Damaged targeting systems had been bypassed. Firing mechanisms were exposed beneath stripped casings. Chain blades carried teeth from half a dozen weapons. The legionaries carried other relics. Thin strips of preserved flesh hung from belts and weapon stocks. Names had been cut into them with the points of combat blades. Each represented a dead brother whose gene seed could not be recovered before the enemy arrived. The strips moved in the poisoned wind like prayer parchments. Raven Guard did not pray over them. They remembered. The World Eaters adapted. Angron still demanded that his sons meet Corax in open battle. His voice crossed every captured frequency, promising death and calling the Raven Lord to judgment. Yet beneath the fury of their Primarch, the surviving captains learned. They ceased pursuing every black-armored figure seen upon a ridge. They began shaping the land. Artillery destroyed crossings before the Raven Guard reached them. Blind hunters seeded the valleys with tracking pulses, forcing the survivors towards higher and more exposed ground. Armored companies burned sources of water, fuel, and shelter. Mechanicum engines collapsed tunnels and filled caves with incendiary compounds. The World Eaters abandoned subtlety without abandoning strategy. They made movement expensive. On the 61st day, Corax found a river of industrial runoff burning from bank to bank. The Raven Guard column had relied upon the channel to shield its reactor signatures during the Western Crossing. World Eaters had flooded it with promethium and ignited it. The Legion passed through the fire. Armor protected them from the worst of the heat, but damaged seals failed. Warriors emerged with flesh cooked beneath their plate. One legionary's lower leg remained standing in the river after the rest of him reached the far bank. The tissue had fused to the armor before tearing apart. He walked 6 more kilometers before falling. No safe ground remained behind them. The wounded began choosing death. The first group did so during a halt beneath the shattered ribs of an orbital defense platform. 7 legionaries had been carried for more than a day. One lacked both legs. Another had lost an arm and most of his abdomen. 2 required constant manual assistance to breathe because their armor systems had failed. Their bearers slept for 19 minutes. When they woke, the wounded were dead. One had opened his throat with a fragment of ceramite. Another had disconnected the nutrient feed sustaining his remaining organs. The warrior without legs had placed the muzzle of a bolt pistol beneath his chin and fired. His head had vanished. Fragments of skull, teeth, and brain matter covered the underside of the defense platform. The pistol remained inside his gauntlet. A line officer struck the apothecary responsible for them. The blow cracked the white armor across the healer's breastplate. "You allowed this. I was treating the living. They were living. They believed they were killing us." The officer raised his fist again. Sergeant Seth caught it. "Strike him twice," Seth said, "and you take his place carrying the medici burden." The officer tore his arm free. Corax entered the shelter. The surviving warriors straightened. He examined each corpse. The deaths were tactically rational. 7 wounded had required 14 warriors to carry them. Their supplies had diminished. Their movement had slowed. Enemy artillery had bracketed the column twice during the previous night. Corax understood the decision. That did not make it theirs to take. "No warrior will repeat this," he said.
One of the bearers looked towards the headless corpse. They saved us. They made a choice belonging to command. They chose for themselves. No. Corax's black eyes moved across the column. You belong to the Legion. Your strength, your blood, and your death serve its purpose. Despair does not release you from that duty. The officer who had struck the apothecary spoke through clenched teeth. What if carrying them kills everyone? Then I decide when they are left. And what gives you that right? Corax looked at him. Responsibility. From that day, the wounded were divided according to mobility. Those capable of marching remained with the columns. Those requiring assistance traveled with slower claws, protected by scouts. Warriors whose wounds could not be sustained without immobilizing the Legion were examined by Corax himself. He delegated none of it. On the 64th day, Legionary Narvos lay against a rock with both legs crushed and his lower spine destroyed. His secondary heart had stopped. Blood filled the left lung faster than the apothecary could drain it. Corax knelt before him. Narvos removed his helmet. Half his face had been burned during the fall of the sanctuary. "My lord," he said, "do you know me?" Narvos almost smiled. "I have not fallen so far." "Do you understand your wounds?" "Yes." "We cannot carry you beyond the ridge." "I know." Corax drew a captured bolt pistol. Narvos looked at the weapon, then back at his Primarch. "Will the Legion endure?" "For as long as I command it." "That was not my question." Corax held his gaze. "Yes." Narvos closed his remaining eye. Corax placed the pistol against his forehead and fired. The shell detonated inside the skull. The rear of the head burst across the stone in a fan of blood and grey tissue. Corax remained kneeling as the body sagged. Every warrior nearby watched him. They learned that their Primarch would order death when necessity demanded it. They also learned he would not hide behind an apothecary or send a sergeant to perform the killing. The rearguard sacrifice came during the 72nd day. World Eaters had driven 3 Raven Guard columns towards the Hestian Canyon, where artillery already covered the northern exit. Corax identified the pattern before the trap closed. The enemy expected them to flee east. Instead, he selected 46 warriors to remain. Their leader was Calvus Ran. The assault officer had lost nearly every warrior who once served beneath him. His jump pack was dead, his left arm replaced by a salvaged prosthetic, and one lung sealed behind armor foam. He accepted the order without hesitation. "How long?" Ran asked. "Until 3 World Eaters companies enter the canyon. Then, you transmit confirmation." Ran looked towards the munitions buried beneath the walls. Captured rockets, melter charges, reactor cores, and demolition explosives filled fissures throughout the stone. Detonation would collapse both sides of the canyon. "No extraction route," he said. "No." Ran checked the magazine of his bolter. "Good." Corax watched him. "You may refuse." "That would be a strange mercy to offer now." "It is not mercy." "No, it is responsibility." Ran looked towards the 45 warriors gathering behind him. "We understand." The main columns withdrew through a passage hidden beneath the eastern ridge. Ran's rearguard remained in the canyon. They left obvious tracks and activated damaged reactor cells to exaggerate their strength. When World Eater's scouts appeared, the Raven Guard opened fire and retreated slowly, surrendering ground meter by meter. The first World Eaters company entered at a run. The second followed through the western mouth. The third came behind Angron's blood-marked standards, chain axes roaring beneath the canyon walls. Ran's warriors fought from a ring of wrecked transports. Bolter fire tore World Eaters apart at close range. Heads burst, chests opened. A chain axe entered the barricade and removed a Raven Guard warrior's arm, shoulder, and half his ribcage. He continued firing with his remaining hand until another axe divided him through the spine. The World Eaters climbed over their dead. Ran's ammunition counter reached 0. He drew his chainsword. The weapon started only after the third attempt. World Eaters closed from every direction. Ran opened the command channel. He did not pray. He did not recite the names of the dead. "Target strength confirmed," he said. Corax received the transmission from beyond the ridge. "Detonate." The canyon vanished. Fire erupted from beneath the World Eaters. Melter charges transformed armor into liquid. Reactor cores burst with miniature suns. Explosives opened the weakened walls, sending millions of tons of rock down upon the combatants. Raven Guard and World Eaters disappeared together. Bodies were flattened inside armor. Tanks folded beneath descending stone. Molten ceramite ran through the canyon floor in glowing streams, carrying fragments of bone and liquefied flesh. The shockwave crossed the eastern ridge and struck Corax's columns from behind. No further transmission came from Ran. Angron's voice found them before nightfall. Every surviving Vox unit activated upon the same stolen frequency. Corax. The name became a snarl across the wastes. "Face me. You hide behind rocks. You murder sons and flee. You call yourself a warrior, while others die in your place." Corax continued walking. The survivors around him listened in silence. Angron's voice rose. "Coward, false brother, slave who mistakes darkness for freedom. Come to me." Corax opened the channel. 312. The World Eater's frequency fell silent. Angron answered after several breaths. "What? Confirmed dead in the canyon. A further 109 buried beyond recovery. 6 armored vehicles destroyed." The nails entered Angron's response as a burst of static and rage. Corax closed the channel. He never insulted his brother. He recited losses. The dead became arithmetic spoken in a calm voice. That cruelty wounded Angron more deeply than mockery. Far beyond Istvan, Brananev's fleet crossed the warp. The journey covered more than 50,000 light-years and seemed determined to destroy them before they reached their destination. Ships emerged from translation with hull plates peeled away. Engines failed between one system and the next. Geller fields flickered, filling corridors with voices spoken by mouths that did not exist. Astropaths died at their stations. Some burned from within, smoke pouring from their eyes and throats. Others tore out their own tongues after receiving fragments of screams from Istvan. Their corpses remained seated within transmission thrones until replacements could be found. Navigators bled continuously. Servitors carried bowls beneath their chairs to catch what ran from their eyes. One died while guiding the fleet through a current of violent unreality, his third eye remaining open after his body had stiffened. Branne ordered the corpse left in place until the translation ended. Marcus Valerius slept only when exhaustion overcame him. The dreams had changed. He no longer saw only a black bird beneath a red giant. He saw salt stretching beneath a poisoned sky. He saw a final ridge crowded with black-armored warriors. He saw Angron charging through rain and smoke while the world burned behind him. Valerius brought the visions to Branne's strategium. "We will arrive too late if we approach as one fleet," he said. Branne examined the system chart. "Traitor patrols will detect any translation close to Istvan. Then we give them something worth detecting." Valerius marked several outer approaches. The Therian vessels enter first under full emissions. They transmit distress calls and present themselves as scattered loyalist survivors. The patrols alter course to intercept. "And my ships?" "Approach behind them with reactors reduced. No Vox, no active augers, until the extraction begins." Branne looked at him. "The decoys will be boarded or destroyed." "Yes." "You speak of your own soldiers." "Yes." "Who commands them?" "I will." "No." Valerius's jaw tightened. "They are Therian men. They should see their prefector upon the bridge. They require an officer willing to complete the deception after the first ship dies. You are more useful directing the pattern from the extraction fleet. They will call it cowardice. Then survive long enough to hear them." Valerius stared at the chart. Branner leaned closer. I will not permit you to spend your life, because guilt makes sacrifice attractive. The plan is mine. The fleet is mine. Their eyes held. Valerius bowed first. Then I remain. On the 80th day, Corax stood above the eastern wastes and saw the campaign narrowing around him. Hundreds of Raven Guard had died since leaving the sanctuary. Ammunition was almost exhausted. The World Eaters controlled every western approach. Blind Hunters moved along the north, while artillery closed the south. Only the east remained open. Beyond it lay a white scar across the poisoned world. The Gular Salt Plains. No cover, no water, no deep stone in which to hide. A dead expanse where even Legiones Astartes could not endure indefinitely. Angron had stopped chasing shadows. He was herding them towards the place where shadows could not exist. By the 81st day, Corax no longer possessed a battlefield. He possessed a corridor. The western routes burned beneath Mechanicum firestorms. Blind Hunters walked through the flames, their harrowing horns sounding from within incandescent clouds. Red beams searched the ruptured ground after every bombardment, testing wreckage and corpses for the heat of hidden armor reactors. To the north, World Eaters' artillery occupied the high valleys. Whirlwinds moved behind armored screens, firing from one position before Raven Guard scouts could approach and relocating while their missiles were still falling. Scorpius tanks lurked among the Black Hills, their launcher systems elevated towards the poisoned sky. The southern passages had been collapsed. Entire mountainsides lay across routes Corax had used for weeks. Where paths remained, the World Eaters had filled them with mines, remote sentry weapons, and the dismembered bodies of Raven Guard scouts. Only the east remained open. Corax stood above a valley whose floor descended towards the distant white of the Gular Salt Plains. The direction was too obvious to mistake for chance. Angron had stopped attempting to catch the Raven Guard. He was driving them. Sergeant Seth knelt beside the Primarch with a hand-drawn map spread across his thigh plate. The parchment had been cut from a word-bearer's scripture banner and scraped clean with a combat blade. Old Colchizian markings remained visible beneath the charcoal lines. The northern column reports artillery movement along all three crossings, Seth said. The southern claws encountered Blind Hunters before dawn. 2 machines destroyed. 4 remain in pursuit. Western strength? Too great to test again? Corax studied the map. For the first time since the massacre, no weakness offered itself. The World Eaters had learned to deny bait. Their armor advanced beneath overlapping artillery. Mechanicum engines watched their flanks. Every force maintained contact with the next. Angron's rage remained at the center of the hunt, but other minds had given it shape. "We continue east," Corax said. Seth did not hide his unease. "Towards the plains." "Yes. There is no concealment there. There is none here either." The first missile wall descended before midday. Raven Guard scouts saw the launcher flashes beyond the ridge and transmitted warning through the shadow cant. The Legion had only seconds. Corax raised one hand. "Move!" The valley ahead vanished beneath explosions. Whirlwind warheads burst in staggered lines, the first impacts tearing open the ground, while later salvos struck the routes survivors might use to avoid them. Stone became shrapnel. Razor fragments crossed the valley at hypersonic speed and struck armor with the fury of mass reactive fire. A Raven Guard warrior lost both arms at the elbows. He remained standing for one step, looking down at the blood pumping from his severed limbs. The next cluster charge detonated above him and peeled the armor from his body in strips. Flesh, organs, and black ceramite struck the warriors behind him. Second pattern, Maun warned over the command channel. Incendiaries. Corax counted the interval. The Raven Guard ran. They carried wounded brothers between them, boots striking the valley floor while the first craters still glowed. Warriors with damaged legs were dragged by restraint cables. Apothecaries moved among the columns, injecting stimulants through armor ports without slowing. The incendiaries fell behind them. Promethium spread across the valley in rolling sheets. Every patch of concealment ignited. Corpse ash became flame. The air itself appeared to burn. A wounded legionary stumbled as his bearer lost footing. Corax turned back. The next salvo had already launched. He reached the fallen warriors, seized both by their armor harnesses, and pulled them forwards. Missiles struck the valley behind him. The blast threw all three through the air. Corax landed upon one knee. The wounded warrior struck hard enough to split the armor around his chest. Blood poured from his mouth grill. The bearer did not rise. A fragment had passed through the rear of his helmet and emerged through the faceplate. Grey matter and fragments of eye floated inside the cracked lens. Corax released the corpse. "Carry the living," he ordered. The column moved before the next barrage. For 6 days, the missiles dictated their pace. The World Eaters did not need to see the Raven Guard. They fired upon possible routes, narrowing movement through timed destruction. Valleys became clocks measured in detonations. Survivors learned the interval between Scorpius salvos by the vibration of distant launchers. Too early, and the first warheads caught them in open ground. Too late, and the second pattern sealed the passage. They crossed through fire because remaining still meant burial. The Legion lost warriors to fragments, collapsing stone, and failed armor seals. One squad emerged from an incendiary strike with every member burning. Their damaged plate trapped the heat inside. Blood boiled beneath their skin. One warrior tore away his own gorget and fell as steam, blood, and cooked flesh burst from the opening. The others continued east. On the 88th day, Corax chose the ground for the last major ambush. 3 canyons met around the ruins of an ancient power station. Broken transmission towers leaned above the intersection. Subterranean conduits connected reactor chambers beneath the roads, many still holding chemical fuel degraded by centuries of neglect. The position appeared defensible. That was its purpose. Empty armor suits were placed behind barricades and fitted with captured reactor cells. Vox units transmitted recordings of Raven Guard casualty reports, weapon checks, and fragmented commands. Blood taken from the dead was spread across the approaches. Everything suggested that the main strength of the Legion had gathered for a desperate stand. Corax concealed fewer than 400 warriors around the intersection. The remainder continued east. The World Eaters found the false position before sunset. Their armor advanced cautiously at first. Predators fired upon the empty barricades. Whirlwinds saturated the high ground. Blind hunters moved through the smoke, detecting the reactor signatures planted among the ruins. The machines confirmed life. The World Eaters charged. Rhinos and land raiders entered the canyon beneath overlapping fire. Infantry followed in dense ranks. Chain axes roared. Warriors shouted Angron's name into the smoke. Corax waited until the center of the column crossed the buried conduits. "Melt the earth!" Raven Guard detonated the charges. Melter bombs ignited beneath the road. The canyon floor became white liquid. Tanks dropped into the sudden collapse, their armor sagging as heat softened ceramite and steel. Captured power plants overloaded a heartbeat later. The first reactor burst beneath a World Eater's Land Raider. The vehicle rose from the ground inside a sphere of fire. Its assault ramp tore free. Legionaries inside became burning silhouettes before the blast reduced them to fragments. A second explosion opened the western canyon wall. Stone descended upon the rear formation. Rhinos disappeared beneath thousands of tons of rock. A Predator turret flew clear of the collapse, trailing the upper half of its commander from the hatch. Raven Guard opened fire from the heights. The special ammunition was not yet used. Standard bolt shells struck the World Eaters trapped between burning vehicles. Helmets burst, knees shattered. Warriors fell into molten fissures and vanished screaming as their armor became part of the glowing earth. The ambush should have broken them. Instead, they came through the fire. World Eaters climbed over tanks whose hulls still ran like wax. They crossed ruptures upon the bodies of their own brothers. Warriors emerged from burning rhinos, with flesh blackening beneath split armor, chain axes still turning in their hands. The Raven Guard fired until their magazines emptied. Then the enemy reached the heights. Chain axes bit through black plate. A World Eater struck Legionary Varnos across the abdomen. The weapon's teeth entered below the breastplate and tore him open to the spine. Intestines spilled through the wound and wrapped around the chain housing. Varnos trapped the axe inside his own body. He drove a combat blade through the World Eater's visor, while the traitor fought to free the weapon. Both fell together, the chain axe still chewing through meat and armor. Seth met another warrior upon the edge of the gorge. His bolter clicked empty. He threw it into the World Eater's face, stepped beneath the answering axe stroke, and drove his knife through the armpit seal. The blade struck fused ribs. Seth twisted until it entered the chest. The World Eater headbutted him. Both helmets split. Seth hooked his fingers into the crack beneath the enemy's faceplate and tore. The helmet came away with the skin of the forehead and cheeks still attached. He drove his thumbs into the exposed eyes and pushed the warrior backwards over the edge. The gorge below had become a river of bodies, blood and leaking reactor coolant. Legionaries fought while burning. Armor seals trapped fire against flesh. Grease and blood ignited together. Warriors killed one another inside clouds that smelled of hot metal and cooked organs. Corax entered the southern breach. His claw passed through a chain axe haft and the arms holding it. The World Eater stared at the severed limbs before Corax's return stroke opened him from shoulder to hip. 3 more charged. Corax tore the first warrior's head from his spine. He drove the skull into the second legionary's chest hard enough to break the breastplate, then killed the third with a claw through both hearts. The World Eaters continued climbing. Their numbers did not diminish quickly enough. A sound crossed the battlefield that no artillery could bury. Angron's roar. The Red Angel emerged from the western smoke, with both chain axes turning. Raven Guard fired upon him. Bolt shells struck his armor and burst. Plasma scorched the plates around his shoulders. Angron did not slow. He reached the Raven Guard line. The first axe stroke removed 3 warriors at the waist. Their upper bodies remained suspended for an instant before blood and organs spilled across the rocks. The second stroke divided a legionary through the chest and continued into the warrior behind him. Angron tore through the formation with no concern for defense. Blades struck him. Shells burst against him. He answered every wound with a death. Corax! The name shook the canyon. Corax saw his brother across the burning ground. For one moment, their eyes met. Angron lowered his head and charged. Corax turned away. He descended upon the World Eater's command cadre. A captain raised a power axe. Corax removed both hands, drove his claw through the warrior's throat, and cast the body into the standard bearers behind him. The Legion banner fell. Corax caught it before it touched the ground. He drove its iron point through the standard bearer's chest and pinned him to a burning rhino. An apothecary attempted to retreat with harvested gene seed canisters fixed to his armor. Corax crossed the distance, opened the white plate across his back, and tore the warrior's spine free with both progenoid glands still attached. Angron saw him killing officers. The Red Angel changed direction. World Eaters filled the space between them. Angron struck his own sons aside. One lost an arm. Another took a chain axe through the shoulder and chest because he failed to move quickly enough. A captain raised both hands in warning and died beneath Angron's boot, his skull crushed into the canyon floor. "Face me!" Corax opened the command frequency. Every functioning Vox unit upon the battlefield carried his answer. "No." Angron stopped. The simple refusal seemed to hurt him more than any blade. Corax looked towards him through smoke and flame. "I will not grant you meaning." The World Eaters around Angron fell silent. "You may kill 10,000 sons," Corax said. "You may fill this world with their blood and call the slaughter victory. You remain what the nails made you." Angron's axes trembled. "A slave." The Red Angel screamed. The sound broke into static across the Vox. He swung at everything within reach. World Eaters died around him, torn open by the weapons they worshipped. Blood struck his armor in sheets. Angron charged through his own sons to reach Corax. Corax had already vanished into the smoke. The Raven Guard disengaged by claws. Charges destroyed the remaining approaches. Snipers killed officers attempting to reform the pursuit. The ambush had not annihilated the World Eaters, but it purchased another passage east. It consumed almost all remaining ammunition. On the 94th day, apothecaries opened the final reserve. The contents had been carried since the Ilium rifts inside sealed canisters, guarded more carefully than food. Kraken penetrator rounds, Scorpius shells designed to rupture armor and poison flesh, plasma flasks protected by cracked shielding, the last melter charges. Warriors gathered in silence while the munitions were distributed. Most received one loaded magazine, some received fewer. Damaged bolters were abandoned beside the road. Warriors removed combat blades from dead brothers and tested the edges against their gauntlets. Chainswords, too ruined to function, were broken into clubs. Seth looked at the magazine in his hand. "When do we use these?" Corax answered him. "When every shot kills." Beyond the system's outer approaches, Valerius's decoy fleet revealed itself. Therian vessels emerged from reduced power and flooded the void with distress signals. Their drives burned bright. Auspex systems transmitted openly. False damage reports identified them as survivors of the massacre attempting to escape Istvan. Traitor patrols altered course. Cruisers and attack craft moved towards the mortal ships, drawn by the promise of helpless prey. Valerius listened from Branna's command deck as the first decoy captain reported contact. "They have seen us, Praefector. Maintain course. We count 4 vessels moving to intercept. Transmit panic." The captain gave a tired laugh. "That will not require acting." The decoy ships accelerated towards destruction. Behind them, Branna's Raven Guard vessels entered the system beneath reduced emissions. Reactor output remained barely sufficient for propulsion. No active augers swept the darkness. No Vox transmission crossed between ships. They descended towards Istvan in silence. One premature signal would reveal everything. Aboard the World Eater's battle barge Dedicated Wrath, Lieutenant Commander Nye Vash Delarax studied the changing patrol pattern. The command deck trembled with restrained power. Weapon crews waited beside loaded systems. World Eater's officers watched the approaching Therian vessels with undisguised hunger. Delarax saw something else. The mortal ships were too visible, too perfectly placed. "Search the space behind them," he ordered. An officer bowed. "Active sweep will reveal our position." "Our position is known." A figure stood beside the command throne, wearing sea-green armor without markings. He called himself Alfarius. Delarax did not believe him. "You will maintain the assigned patrol route," the envoy said. "There is a rescue force in this system. There are mortal ships fleeing a dead world. They are bait. Then let other vessels consume it." Delarax turned towards the Alpha Legionary. "Angron hunts Corax upon the surface. If loyalists have returned for him, I will destroy them. You will obey your orders." The World Eater smiled behind his helm. "The nails do not favor obedience." The envoy said nothing. Delarax ordered the reactors prepared for full output. Upon Istvan, the 97th night descended over the last ridge before the Gular salt plains. The Raven Guard halted. World Eater's artillery glowed upon the western horizon. Blind hunter pulses traveled through the ground. The white waste beyond the ridge reflected the distant fires like a field of old bone. Corax ordered the survivors to sleep in shifts. Some laughed quietly at the command. Others obeyed before exhaustion could kill them standing. Warriors lay among the rocks with loaded bolters across their chests and blades in their hands. Apothecaries moved between them, marking those unlikely to wake. Corax stood alone upon the ridge. He looked west. The entire horizon burned. Angron's army advanced behind that wall of fire. tens of thousands closing upon fewer than 3,000 survivors. Corax knew nothing of Branna's fleet. He saw no possibility of rescue. He believed the next sunrise would be the final morning of the Raven Guard. Behind him, his sons slept. Before him, the salt plains waited. Corax remained awake until the darkness began to thin. Dawn came to the Gular salt plains as a bruise spreading beneath the eastern horizon. Poison fog crawled across the white expanse in low, dragging banks. It gathered inside cracks in the salt crust and coiled around the black rocks of the final ridge. Wherever the vapor touched exposed metal, it left a greasy film that smoked faintly beneath the first light. The plains beyond offered no refuge. The crust was thin in places, covering brine pits deep enough to swallow a land raider. Other regions had hardened into razored shelves, capable of cutting through damaged armor seals. No water waited there, no caves, no wreckage, no stone beneath which 3,000 survivors might disappear. Behind the Raven Guard, the west burned. Artillery flashes moved along the horizon. Whirlwind salvos climbed through the black smoke in slow, glittering arcs. Armored engines ground across the valleys the Legion had abandoned during the night. Between the fires came the World Eaters. They advanced in numbers the Raven Guard no longer possessed the ammunition to count. White and blue armor had been stained almost entirely red. Some warriors wore the blood of the drop site massacre beneath newer layers gathered during the hunt. Others had repainted their plate with the remains of Raven Guard taken in the eastern passes. Chain axes roared beneath the thunder. World Eaters beat weapons against shields and tank hulls, creating a metallic rhythm that rolled across the salt. Their standards rose above the smoke, decorated with skulls, severed hands, and the split helms of loyalist dead. At their center walked Angron. Corax watched from the ridge. He had donned his helmet before sunrise. Its left lens was cracked, and threat runes flickered across his vision in numbers too great for the damaged systems to resolve. His armor had been repaired so many times that little remained of its original surface. Iron-grey plates covered one thigh. A section of crimson ceramite protected his ribs. His ruined flight assembly was gone, and only one lightning claw remained functional. Behind him stood the last 3,000, perhaps fewer. The Legion had stopped making exact counts. Warriors died during every movement. Scouts remained unaccounted for. Some of those standing would be dead before the apothecaries completed another tally. Corax turned from the approaching army. "Form according to weapons," he ordered. No company designations were spoken. They had died upon the Urgol Depression. Bolter-bearing legionaries occupied the center of the ridge in staggered ranks. Each carried one loaded magazine, some containing ammunition of 3 or 4 different types. Heavy weapons covered the slopes, their crews positioned where ruined autocannons, missile launchers and plasma weapons could fire until their barrels failed. Warriors with functioning jump packs gathered behind the line. Most assemblies were damaged. Several had fuel for only one ascent. Others had been repaired with components taken from World Eaters dead and might explode the instant they ignited. The wounded formed where they could still use a weapon. Those unable to stand were placed among the rocks with bolt pistols, grenades and blades. Armor panels were fixed into the salt as shields before them. Apothecaries carried the recovered gene seed to a shallow trench at the ridge's summit. The canisters represented hundreds of Raven Guard who had survived the betrayal only as blood, memory, and the possibility of sons not yet born. Melter charges were fixed beneath the containers. If the line fell, the apothecaries would destroy them. Maun limped towards Corax. The brace around the strike captain's leg was black with soot. His face remained scarred by the Thunderhawk crash, and one eye had swollen almost shut beneath the cracked edge of his helmet. "The southern slope is weaker," Maun said. "The crust beneath it will not bear armor, but it may bear infantry. Place the last plasma weapons there. They will overheat. Then they will be useful until they do." Maun looked west. "They are more than 10 to 1. Yes, our ammunition may kill 1 in 4. if every warrior fires well. And after that, Corax flexed his surviving talons. After that, we use what remains. Maun gave a quiet laugh. I preferred commanding the skies. You complained then as well. I had more subjects upon which to improve. The humor died between them. Maun removed his helmet and looked upon his Primarch with his remaining eye. Was there ever a route from this world? Not one I could see. And now? Corax looked towards the salt. No. Maun replaced his helmet. Then I am relieved we have stopped walking. Corax moved to the center of the ridge. His sons watched him. No banners stirred above them. No drums sounded. No chaplain raised a crozius and promised glory. The survivors of Istvan had been stripped of anything that could turn death into ceremony. Corax gave them no heroic falsehoods. 98 days ago, he said, Horus expected certainty. His voice crossed the Legion command net. He expected the 19th Legion to die upon his chosen ground. He expected our names to become an entry upon a list of murdered brothers. The World Eaters continued advancing. We denied him. Corax looked across the black helmets and mismatched plate. We denied him in the rifts. We denied him in the western ravines. We denied him beneath the guns of the Iron Warriors and before the machines sent to drag us from concealment. A missile battery fired beyond the smoke. The incoming runes appeared upon every functioning display. Today, he will purchase certainty again. Corax lowered his claw. We will make the price so great that every traitor who survives this war will remember it whenever the light fails behind him. He did not promise that the Emperor knew they lived. He did not promise rescue. He did not promise remembrance. No death without purpose, Corax said. No shot without a kill. No mercy for those who gave us none. The Legion did not cheer. Sergeant Seth checked the seating of his magazine. Maun locked his bolt pistol to his wrist. Across the ridge, warriors lowered visors, tested blades, and braced damaged shields into the salt. That was their answer. The first artillery salvo fell short. Warheads burst along the western face of the ridge, throwing white salt and black stone into the sky. The explosions walked upwards in measured intervals. World Eaters' tanks advanced behind the barrage. Predators fired over the infantry. Whirlwinds released fresh salvos without waiting for the first impacts to settle. Rhino formations spread across the approaches, their tracks crushing the fallen beneath them. Angron lifted one axe. The artillery stopped. His captains argued through intercepted Vox channels. They wanted the ridge broken by bombardment. They wanted the Raven Guard stripped from cover before the Legion advanced. Angron killed the nearest speaker. Corax saw the body fall beside him. Then the Red Angel pointed towards the ridge. The World Eaters charged. Tens of thousands came through the smoke. Their advance possessed no elegance. Companies merged into one another. Warriors outpaced their armor. Tanks fired through the ranks in front of them because slowing would have displeased their Primarch. The first Predator shell struck a World Eaters squad from behind. 3 warriors vanished inside the explosion. Another lost both legs and was trampled by those following. A Rhino gunner raked the backs of his own legionaries while attempting to suppress the ridge. Bodies burst beneath the heavy bolter stream. None turned. They climbed across their dead. Corax watched the distance close. Heavy weapons crews requested permission to fire. He denied them. The World Eaters crossed the first markers scratched into the salt. Still, Corax waited. Their howls reached the ridge without Vox transmission. The nails drove them forwards, feeding pain into fury until each warrior seemed determined to reach the loyalist line before his brothers. They entered the killing ground. Corax lowered his hand. The last massed volley of the 19th Legion began. Thousands of bolters fired in disciplined succession. The first rank fired and knelt. The second fired over them. The third fired while the first reloaded from whatever loose rounds remained. Kraken penetrators struck frontal plate and passed through. World Eaters jerked backwards as the shells opened armor, ribs and hearts in straight, brutal lines. Standard mass-reactive rounds entered the holes and detonated within. Torsos burst. Heads vanished. Arms carrying chain axes spun through the air, trailing blood and fiber bundles. Scorpius shells opened armor joints and released toxins into transhuman flesh. World Eaters stumbled as organs failed inside them. Some continued running until blood filled their helmets and poured from the grills in red ropes. The heavy weapons joined. Plasma fire crossed the slope in white-blue lances. Warriors became incandescent silhouettes. Armor ran from their bodies. Flesh flashed into vapor, leaving blackened skeletons standing for an instant before they collapsed into the salt. Missiles struck the densest formations. World Eaters disappeared beneath fountains of meat and ceramite. One warhead burst at chest height and spread a ring of severed torsos across the warriors behind it. Legs continued running without bodies. A head struck the Raven Guard line and shattered against a shield. The front ranks ceased to exist. The mass behind them climbed over the remains. Raven Guard bolters continued firing. Ammunition counters reached nothing. Weapons clicked empty one after another. Ceph fired his final shell into the face of a World Eater climbing the slope. The helmet split. Bone and grey matter erupted backwards into the mouth grill of the warrior behind him. Ceph discarded the bolter. He drew his combat blade. Across the ridge, thousands did the same. The World Eaters struck the line. Chain axes met shields, knives and empty rifles. The sound ceased to resemble battle. It became a continuous grinding roar as motorized teeth entered ceramite and flesh. Warriors fought too close for volleys, too close for formation, too close even for full swings. A World Eater buried his axe in a Raven Guard shield and ripped both shield and arm away. The Raven Guard drove his knife beneath the traitor's gorget with his remaining hand. Blood sprayed across both warriors. They fell locked together. Another Raven Guard lost both legs to a chain axe stroke. He struck the ground upright, stabilized by the shattered ends of his armor. He fired a bolt pistol upwards into the attackers pressing around him. One World Eater's abdomen burst. A second lost his jaw. The pistol clicked empty. An axe descended through the Raven Guard's helmet. The blade split skull and faceplate together. Brain matter sprayed across the warriors behind him, coating their lenses in grey-red pulp. The World Eaters advanced over what remained. Maun fired his pistol until the barrel glowed. When it failed, he used the weapon as a hammer. He broke one helmet, drove the ruined casing through the exposed face beneath, and tore it free with teeth embedded in the metal. The southern slope collapsed. World Eaters poured through the opening. Corax entered them. His first sweep severed 4 arms and opened 2 chests. The return stroke removed a warrior's head and continued through the throat of another. Blood struck his armor in sheets. He became the black storm his sons had followed through the rifts. Where the line failed, he appeared. Where World Eaters gathered, bodies opened. He caught a chain axe between his talons and tore the weapon from its wielder. The World Eater lunged with a knife. Corax seized him by the skull and drove him face first into the salt until the helmet collapsed and the contents ran from the grill. A captain came at him behind a power shield. Corax struck once. The shield split. The claw passed through breastplate, fused ribs and both hearts. Corax lifted the captain and cast him down the slope into his advancing brothers. He moved through the enemy faster than the damaged optics of his sons could follow. They saw only the consequence of his passage: severed limbs, open torsos, and fountains of atomized blood marking a path through red armor. His own plate disappeared beneath gore. Blood filled its joints. Intestines wrapped around one greave before being torn away by movement. Only the black lenses of his helm remained distinct within the slaughter. The World Eaters began shouting his name. Angron heard them. The Red Angel saw Corax upon the ridge. He abandoned everything else. Angron drove forwards, both chain axes carving a road through loyalist and traitor alike. Raven Guard died beneath his weapons. World Eaters too slow to move were split or crushed aside. Nothing stood between the brothers but the collapsing mass of their sons. Corax saw him come. There was nowhere left to retreat. Behind the ridge waited the salt plains and death by slow encirclement. Around him, the last of the 19th Legion was being dragged beneath a red tide. Corax turned to face his brother. His remaining claw ignited. Angron raised both axes. "Corax!" the Red Angel charged. The sky opened. Orbital fire struck the World Eaters formation. The first plasma lance carved a trench through the western slope. Warriors vanished inside white fire. Tanks split open. Armor and flesh became vapor before the thunder reached the ridge. A second strike crossed behind Angron, tearing through hundreds of his sons. Incendiaries descended next. Promethium spread across the battlefield in burning rivers. World Eaters caught within it continued running until heat entered their armor and cooked them alive. They fell vomiting blood and pieces of lung through their grills. Angron stopped. Everyone looked towards the sky. Black shapes descended through the smoke. Stormbirds and thunderhawks came under the covering fire, their hulls bearing the pale raven of the 19th Legion. Defensive weapons hammered the World Eaters' slopes. Autocannons tore squads apart. Heavy bolters opened lines through the enemy. For one heartbeat, Corax did not move. Disbelief had time to exist. Then command returned. "Prepare for embarkation." Dropships struck the ridge hard enough to fracture the salt beneath them. Assault ramps crashed down. Raven Guard warriors fired from within, adding fresh bolter volleys to the failing line. One of the first legionaries down the ramp carried the black markings of deliverance. Branna's warriors had come. "Wounded first," Corax ordered. "Gene seed follows. Mobile strength forms the rearguard." Maun caught his arm. "The first craft is ready for you." "No, my lord." "Load the wounded." Corax turned towards Angron. The Red Angel was already charging through the orbital fire. Raven Guard dragged their wounded aboard. Apothecaries carried the gene seed canisters between them. Dropships lifted as soon as their compartments filled, engines incinerating the World Eaters who reached the landing zones. More descended. The ridge became an extraction ground built upon the dead. Corax remained between it and Angron. In orbit, Commander Branna Nev watched the casualty runes multiply across his command display. The final vessels had not yet reached the surface. Traitor patrols were turning from the Therian decoys. A new contact appeared upon the edge of weapons range. The identification reached Branna a moment later. The World Eater's battle barge, Dedicated Wrath, was approaching under full power. His tactical officer looked towards him. At present acceleration, it reaches firing range before the evacuation is complete. Branna stared at the image of Istvan beneath them. Then we hold. Behind the extraction fleet, the Dedicated Wrath brought its weapons awake. The calculation condemned them before the final dropship touched the surface. Branna Nev stood upon the command deck of the Avenger-class Grand Cruiser as targeting runes multiplied across the tactical sphere. Istvan hung beneath the fleet, its atmosphere veiled by ash, weapons fire, and the burning remains of ships murdered weeks before. Every active vessel in Branna's formation held position above the Gular salt plains. Beyond them, the Dedicated Wrath approached under full power. "Updated interception," reported the Master of Auspex. "The battle barge enters effective weapons range in 26 minutes. "Evacuation estimate?" Branna asked. 30 minutes. More if surface losses disrupt the landing pattern. "Recalculate for enemy reactor overload." The officer hesitated. 20 minutes. The answer passed through the bridge. No one spoke. The Dedicated Wrath was a vessel built to break fleets and bombard worlds. Its void shields outmatched those of any single ship under Branna's command. Its lance batteries could cut through his formation before the Raven Guard vessels closed to boarding range. Even victory would leave the extraction fleet crippled above a world swarming with traitors. "Disperse the escorts," advised one captain over the command link. "Present multiple targets and force the battle barge to divide its fire." "No," Branna said. "My lord, a concentrated formation gives them a single firing solution. It also gives the dropships a single recovery zone. Dispersal slows the lift. We may save the fleet. We came to save the Legion. Branner enlarged the surface display. Stormbirds and Thunderhawks moved between orbit and the final ridge in a continuous black stream. Several were damaged. One had lost its port engine and climbed on a column of flame, its pilot fighting to prevent the transport from rolling into the ships below. "Every vessel holds position," Branner ordered. "Void shields remain raised. Weapons remain trained upon the dedicated Wrath. No ship withdraws, while one Raven Guard remains upon the surface." The command deck acknowledged him. Not every voice was steady. Marcus Valerius stood at the orbital coordination station, surrounded by the ghosts of his dying cohort. Therian vessels burned upon the system's outer approaches. They had revealed themselves under full emissions and filled the void with panicked distress signals. Traitor patrols had taken the bait. The first decoy ship had been crippled by lance fire. The second was being boarded. Valerius listened to its final transmission through a channel degraded by static and weapons discharge. "Enemy within the dorsal galleries," reported Captain Varro. Mortal gunfire rattled behind his voice. "Bulkheads failing from Section 9 through Section 12. We have lost the enginarium." "Can you maintain acceleration?" Valerius asked. "For another minute. You need 3. A pause followed. Varro understood. "Then we shall find them." The transmission shifted as the Therian captain turned from the Vox. "All surviving hands to the reactor decks. Fix bayonets. Seal the bridge behind us." Men shouted in the distance. They were ordinary human soldiers armed with las rifles, shotguns, and courage insufficient to stop Legionis Astartes' boarders. They knew it. They advanced anyway. Varro returned to the channel. "Prefector, I am here. Did we draw them far enough?" Valerius looked at the system plot. 3 traitor vessels had altered course to kill the decoys. All 3 now lay too distant to interfere with the extraction. "Yes. Then remember us accurately." The transmission ended beneath bolter fire. Varro's ship continued accelerating for 1 minute and 47 seconds before its reactor failed. The vessel rolled through the void, burning from a dozen wounds. Traitor boarding craft clung to its hull like carrion insects. Valerius removed the captain's rune from the display. Another decoy called for him, then another. Mortal ships were opened by lances, their armor spilling atmosphere, machinery, and frozen bodies into space. Boarding torpedoes punched through decks crowded with Therian soldiers. World Eaters emerged from the impact craters and butchered men who had never expected to survive a battle with the Emperor's sons. Still, the decoys maintained their courses. They died because the enemy considered them easier prey. They died for a Primarch most had never seen. Valerius coordinated their destruction, while Stormbirds climbed from Istvan. Angron's voice entered every Raven Guard vessel at once. The broadcast came through emergency frequencies, tactical channels, and corrupted Mechanicum code. It overwhelmed signal filters and flooded command decks with the Red Angel's rage. "Corax!" The name distorted beneath static and the roar of chain axes. "You flee again. You leave sons beneath my blades and call survival victory. Come down. Face me. Let your legion see what hides beneath its father's wings." Branner listened from his command throne. The screaming behind Angron belonged to dying warriors. Some were World Eaters. Some were Raven Guard. The distinction had ceased to matter to the Red Angel. "I will take your head to Horus," Angron continued. "I will tear these ships from the sky with my hands. My sons will climb into the fire after you. There is no darkness deep enough to hide you from me." Branner severed the transmission. The bridge fell silent. "Block the frequency," he ordered. "We cannot isolate it," said the signals officer. "Then fill it with static. I will not have his voice become the last sound our crews hear." Upon the surface, the extraction became slaughter. The first dropships had landed behind the Raven Guard line. The next wave descended into a sky filled with World Eater's fire. Autocannon bursts struck a Thunderhawk as it lowered its ramp. The rounds walked across the fuselage, puncturing armor and tearing through the warriors inside. One shell entered a Raven Guard's abdomen and burst against his spine. His body came apart, filling the troop compartment with blood, organs, and fragments of black plate. The gunship lifted anyway. A Stormbird descended through the smoke, with more than 200 survivors already aboard. World Eater's armor fired from the western slope. A Lascannon beam struck beneath the port wing and burned through the engine assembly. The Stormbird rolled. Its pilot fought to level the craft as it passed above the landing zone. A second beam entered the troop compartment. The gunship erupted. Its hull opened from within. Burning legionaries fell from the sky. Some remained alive, limbs beating against the air before they struck the salt, hard enough to burst inside their armor. Severed arms and heads rained across the evacuation ground. Molten plating landed among the wounded, cutting through bodies and setting medici stretchers alight. The main fuselage struck beside the ridge. Hundreds died inside it. The wreck plowed through a loading formation and came apart against the rocks. Fire swallowed warriors waiting to embark. Ammunition detonated throughout the broken hull, firing armor fragments and pieces of corpses across the landing zone. Pilots approaching from above altered course. Corax opened the extraction channel. Maintain descent. One Thunderhawk commander answered through alarm tones. The landing ground is obstructed. Land upon the wreckage. My lord, the debris. Land. The next Thunderhawk came down through the burning remains of the Stormbird. Its landing gear crushed bodies into the salt. One strut snapped beneath a severed engine cowling. The pilot held the gunship level while its ramp opened into the fire. Raven Guard carried their wounded aboard. Those still capable of fighting used the Stormbird wreck as a barricade. They fired from behind melted hull plates and piles of dead brothers. When ammunition failed, they waited with knives. World Eaters reached the wreck in packs. A chain axe tore through the barricade and opened a Raven Guard from collar to hip. Blood and sections of lung sprayed across the fuselage. The dying warrior caught the weapon's haft and held it inside his body, while the brother beside him drove a blade through the attacker's visor. Another World Eater climbed over the wreck. Corax seized him by the throat. The Primarch crushed the gorget, tore the warrior from his footing, and hurled him into the advancing mass. 3 World Eaters fell beneath the body. Corax reached them before they rose. His lightning claw opened the first through the chest. Both hearts emerged between the talons in a burst of blood. A backswing removed another warrior's face and most of his skull. The third drove a chain axe into Corax's side. Teeth bit through patched armor. Corax trapped the weapon against his body, tore the World Eater's arm from its socket, and drove the severed limb through the traitor's breastplate. Bone entered between the ribs. The warrior fell backwards, impaled by his own arm. Final gene seed canisters aboard, Maun reported. Wounded? Those who can be reached. Corax looked across the ridge. Isolated Raven Guard still fought among the wrecks. Some could no longer withdraw. World Eaters surrounded them in red-armored circles. Recover everyone capable of reaching the ships, Corax said. The next craft is the last. Load it. Your place is aboard. My place is here until they are gone. Maun stood at the ramp of the final Thunderhawk, one hand braced against the hull. You have made that argument for 98 days, and you have failed to improve it. A Raven Guard rearguard claw withdrew towards them. Only 6 warriors remained. 2 carried a third between them. The wounded legionary had lost everything below the waist. His entrails hung through the cracked armor around his abdomen, dragging across the salt. World Eaters followed. Corax stepped between them. He fired a recovered bolt pistol until the weapon locked empty. Each shell killed. A World Eater's throat burst. Another lost a knee and fell beneath the warriors behind him. A kraken, Round entered a captain's breastplate and emerged from his back, carrying fragments of spine. The final Raven Guard reached the ramp. Corax threw the empty pistol into a World Eater's face and followed it with his claw. Talons entered both eye lenses and burst from the rear of the skull. "Lift," he ordered. Maun remained upon the ramp. Corax backed towards him, while World Eaters closed through the fire. The Thunderhawk's engines rose to a scream. Exhaust ignited bodies and salt alike. Corax boarded last. The ramp remained open as the craft lifted. World Eaters reached the landing zone beneath it. Engine wash consumed the first ranks. Armor glowed, flesh cooked inside sealed plate. Warriors fell with blood boiling through their grills. Angron came through them. The Red Angel ran into the flames, trampling his own sons. Fire wrapped his armor. Both chain axes turned in his hands. He leapt. For an instant, Angron rose level with the open ramp. Corax met his brother's gaze across the fire. One chain axe struck the Thunderhawk's landing gear. Teeth carved through ceramite and threw sparks into the troop compartment. The impact shook the craft. Angron fell short. He struck the salt below, landed upon one knee, and rose roaring as the Thunderhawk climbed beyond his reach. Corax remained at the ramp until smoke swallowed him. Aboard the dedicated Wrath, Nai Vash Delarax watched the Raven Guard extraction fleet grow upon the tactical display. "Reactor output to full combat yield," he ordered. "Bring Lance batteries to readiness. All boarding companies to assault stations." The World Eater's command deck awakened around him. Warning lights turned red. Weapon systems drew power. Servitors announced firing solutions in toneless voices. The Alpha Legion envoy stepped beside the throne. "You will maintain your assigned route." Delarax turned his scarred face towards him. "Corax is aboard those ships. You have standing orders. I have a Primarch within reach. Your orders come from the War Master. My Primarch hunts upon that world, while I have spent weeks killing broken vessels in the dark. I will not surrender this kill to distance and obedience." The envoy's sea-green armor carried no rank. He called himself Alfarius. No one aboard the dedicated Wrath believed the name, but Horus's authority traveled with it. "You will disengage," the Alpha Legionary said. Delarax rose from his throne. The Butcher's nails tightened behind his eyes. Pain sharpened the Raven Guard vessels upon the display until every target rune resembled a wound awaiting a blade. "I will destroy their escorts. I will board their command vessel. I will drag Corax back to Istvan in chains." "You will do none of those things." Delarax reached for his axe. Althix Cordasis drew first. He had stood at Delarax's right hand through the massacre and the Void Hunt. His armor bore the white and blue of the World Eaters. Blood marked the places where he had killed loyalists beneath his commander's gaze. His bolt pistol touched the side of Delarax's helmet. The weapon fired. The shell entered above the ear. Delarax's skull burst across the command throne. Bone fragments struck the tactical display. Grey matter and blood painted the brass restraints. The lieutenant commander remained upright for a heartbeat before the nails spasmed inside his ruined brain and folded him to the deck. World Eater's officers reached for weapons. Cordasis turned the pistol upon them. Lieutenant Commander Delarax attempted to violate the War Master's direct command, he said. "I have corrected the failure." The envoy stepped beside him. "Return the vessel to its patrol route." The officers looked at Delarax's corpse. The nails urged them towards murder. Horus's authority held them still. Slowly, weapons lowered. Cordasis sat upon the blood-covered throne. "Reduce reactor output. Alter course away from the Loyalist formation. Maintain weapons lock until extreme range." The dedicated Wrath turned. Only after the command deck resumed its rhythm did the envoy approach him. "The Legion's assets are aboard?" "Those selected for extraction," Cordasis replied. "Corax must reach Terra. He believes he carries only survivors." "Good." Cordasis looked upon the Raven Guard fleet. "Treachery is most effective when mistaken for deliverance. Branna waited for annihilation. The dedicated Wrath reached the limit of its predicted firing corridor. Void shields flared across the Raven Guard formation. Weapons locked upon the battle barge. Every captain awaited the first lance strike. It never came. The traitor vessel altered course. "Confirm," Branna demanded. "Dedicated Wrath is reducing output," said the Master of Auspex. "It is withdrawing to extreme range. Damage? None detected. Other contacts? No vessel capable of compelling its retreat." Branna stared at the tactical sphere. Why? No one answered. The final Thunderhawk docked with a scream of damaged engines. Atmosphere vented from its wounded hull. Recovery crews sealed the bay, while fire suppression systems drowned the craft in chemical foam. "Last surface transport secured," reported the flight master. "Raise shields to full strength," Branna ordered. "Recover all surviving escorts. Prepare immediate departure." The fleet climbed from Istvan. Corax entered the command deck beneath his own power. 98 days covered him. Blood had dried across his armor in layers. Salt crusted the joints. One pauldron was split, his breastplate punctured, and his remaining claw blackened by the bodies of Angron's sons. Behind him came Maun, carried by 2 warriors after his injured leg finally failed. Branna left the throne and bowed. "My lord." Corax looked at the tactical display. "Why did the battle barge withdraw?" "We do not know." "Did you damage it?" "No." "Did another force threaten it?" "None we detected." A captain offered the answer no one believed. "Perhaps the World Eaters lost their nerve." Corax turned towards him. "No." One word ended the suggestion. The Raven Lord studied the retreating rune until it passed beyond firing range. An enemy had chosen not to kill him. That was not mercy. It was strategy he could not yet see. "Set course away from Istvan," Corax said. "Once we are clear, we make for Terra." Branna inclined his head. "The Emperor must be warned." "The Emperor must be warned," Corax agreed. "Then the Legion will be rebuilt." Engines carried the survivors into the dark. Hours later, an apparently wounded Raven Guard entered an isolated maintenance compartment. His borrowed armor bore the scars of Istvan. Blood darkened the seals around his abdomen. A strip of preserved flesh, carrying a dead legionary's name, hung from his belt. He closed the hatch. From beneath the skin of his forearm, he removed a thin membrane marked with false gene-coded identifiers. The flesh beneath was unscarred. He placed 2 fingers against a concealed transmitter. A recognition pulse entered the void. Silent, brief, Alpha Legion. Beyond the bulkhead, Corax's sons counted their dead and called their escape victory. The Raven Lord had escaped Angron. Treachery had escaped with him.